We'll go ahead and begin. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out on this very, very chilly evening. I know we have a number of items of interest to different citizen groups, so we appreciate your attendance and your participation. This is the first meeting of the 2025 meeting schedule, so we'll have approximately 23 more, give or take. We'll begin with an invocation by Dr. Audrey Chapman he's a pastor at New Faith Christian Ministries, and I'll lead the pledge. All rise.
We'd all bow our heads, please. Father, in the name of Jesus, we come to you today to just tell you thank you. Thank you for allowing us to come to another year. And God, as we come to this year, God, give wisdom, give knowledge, give understanding on as the business is being discussed, the choices are made under the unction of you, God. I thank you for each one that stands tonight as representation for us in this city and in this community. Now bless in the name of Jesus and cause change to be purpose-driven in the name of Jesus. And we love you and we thank you for what you're going to do in this year to benefit the people as well as our community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday.
Here.
Director Phyllis Beard. I believe Director Phyllis Beard is on Zoom. She is just muted right now. Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Dudley Webb.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia.
Here.
Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. This time we'll consider the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda as presented?
Mayor, there is one item. It's item number 6 on your consent agenda. It's resolution R-25-06. It would be a resolution amending resolution 10346 and 10442 by approving an updated City of Hot Springs pay table for uniformed public safety personnel and for other purposes. That matter needs a little bit more background work done before we bring it back to you for your consideration. So we would ask that the board remove that from tonight's agenda, and we'll bring it back when it's ready.
So amend.
Second.
Motion to amend, and a second by Director Webb. All in favor of amending, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay.
I move to approve as amended.
We have a motion
Second.
to approve as amended by Director Garcia, second by Director Trusty. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved as amended. Moving on to consideration of the approval of the minutes of the regularly held meeting on December 17, 2024. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented?
No, sir.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Director Trusty, seconded by
Second.
Director Webb. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. Do directors have any special guests they'd like to recognize? Recognizing that everybody here is a special guest, especially on this cold evening. We'll move it on to the city manager's report. Mr. Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. First, want to lead off with Martin Luther King holiday closing. All city offices except for public safety and the airport will be closed in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday, January the 20th, and reopen on Tuesday, January 21st. Solid waste departments, residential routes, which include Earth Angel and the leaf and mulch routes, all of those will run one day behind schedule. So if your day's on Monday, it'll be Tuesday, Tuesday's route on Wednesday, and so forth until they get through that Saturday. Intercity bus and paratransit services will run as normally scheduled. However, Route 3 may experience some delays due to the MLK Jr. Parade. Transportation Depot will be closed and reopened to the public at 8 o'clock on January 21st, and the compost facility will also be closed on the 20th. Trendsetter City Award. The City of Hot Springs is proud to announce its recognition as an Arkansas Business 2024 Trendsetter City. This honor highlights cities and towns of all sizes from across Arkansas whose innovative initiatives for community development and economic growth inspire change and make a difference in our state. Hot Springs was recognized in one Trendsetter City category as a winner in the Public Works, Environmental, and Green Management category. The city was featured in the Arkansas Business December 16th edition and will further be celebrated at the Arkansas Municipal League's winter meeting later on this month. As I typically do, I want to welcome our new hires, Bernard Gilbert in wastewater lift maintenance tech, and Debbie Bryant in our utility billing services as a customer service rep. I'd like to welcome them to the city's team. We've also have some promotions. Brian Cox was promoted to the solid waste transfer station supervisor. Josh Kincannon promoted to the Hot Springs Fire Department fire marshal. Addison Dunn was also promoted to Hot Springs Fire Department fire marshal. Want to recognize one other employee this evening. He's an employee that works in utilities. Jonathan High, he received his Class 3 wastewater treatment operator municipal license from ADEQ, Arkansas Department of Energy and Environmental Division of Environmental Quality. He has taken several tests since May of 2024. It's quite an achievement to be able to get your Class 3, Class 4 license, whether that's in water or wastewater. And just want to recognize Jonathan for the hard work he's put in achieving in attaining that license. CDBG fiscal year 2025, our community development block grant. It's an open application period. Deadline has been extended to 5 p.m. on Friday, January the 24th. For more information, contact our CDBG administrator, Lauren Morphew, at 501-321-1870. If you need additional information, you can contact our planning department to get directly in contact with Ms. Morphew. Hot Springs Fire Police Department is under a recruiting period. They're accepting recruitment applications until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, January the 29th. Applications will need to be delivered to the City of Hot Springs Human Resource Department here at 133 Convention Boulevard, as well as our Hot Springs Fire Department. Their recruitment applications will be accepted until 4 p.m. Friday, March the 21st. So that one's going to be open a little bit longer than our PD. But police, again, will be accepting those recruitment applications until Wednesday, January the 29th. Youth T-ball and softball signups are happening. The Sports Recreation Department opened its registration for the 2025 Spring Youth T-ball and softball seasons. Individuals are able to sign up until Monday, March the 3rd, if you have a child that's interested in being part of those sports programs. The 2024 paving program has concluded after milling and paving 22.88 miles of city streets. The program included improvements to 78 different streets and street segments. That's doesn't even sound right coming out, in some of our past years, but our roads now is truly paying off. We've seen something very similar in the year before, and we'll have a 2025 paving schedule coming to the board in the near future. They're rating those out now, so we'll have a list coming to you soon. But I am pleased that we were able to complete the 2024 paving program in 2024. This, I think, may be the first year we've done that in a few. Must not have been as many highway department jobs going on, and we were able to keep a couple of crews here, so we were happy with that. Community Resource Center is now on Facebook. Or I should say, the Friends of the Hot Springs Community Resource Center. We've got a warming shelter happening now. It started night before last, and it's going to go on probably through next week, depending on what those temperatures are. I think it's next Wednesday before we actually start seeing some temperatures get out of the 20s overnight. We've got a great group that are volunteering over there. Can't say enough about those that are working and all the different churches and different groups that have taken part of that, whether we have people bringing in supplies, bringing in cash donations, whatever it may be. I want to say there were a little over 100 people there last night, and as we move through the next few days, we may see even more coming in. Sports Recreation is excited to announce a newly transformed playground. We've got a new playground out at Kimmery Park. So if you haven't been out there in a while, take your kids out there and let them enjoy that great amenity there. And then finally, I want to talk about utilities. You know, this is a time of year where we get into these teens, we get into these 20s. We usually are okay those first few days, but as extended periods happen, we start seeing main breaks, we start seeing service lines break. So we want to ask everyone to conserve water as we move into, especially the period that's going to bring some of the snow and potential ice. We want to remind everyone that if you need answers on what you can do to help prevent freezing, you can go to our website, the utility webpage. It's cityhs.net/frozen-pipes, or contact our utilities department. If you leave just a little bit of water, cold and hot, on a drip, that should suffice. It doesn't need to be a stream. It doesn't need to have a lot coming out. It really is just a drip. Otherwise, if everybody runs a stream, we could run out of water. But we're going to ask everyone to conserve water as best they can as we get through the next 8 or 9 days of this chilling weather. And then, Mayor, it hasn't come out. It's not official yet. We haven't received the official release on this yet, but I did get a call from Senator Bozeman's office, and the City of Hot Springs was awarded a RAISE grant in the amount of a little over $2.3 million. That's going to go on into a planning phase. We're going to come back with that on a $12.7 million grant application for capital that'll be part of whatever comes out of this planning sessions that we have. And it's things where we're going to have a lot of multimodal trails, the extension of Belding Street that we've talked about for a couple of decades. So all of this planning will come in. We'll use that as part of our request for the 12.7 in capital, make some of those things happen. But we're very excited about it. We didn't think we were going to get the RAISE grant. Got another email from them that they were taking another look at our application, and then we found out yesterday that they approved us for that 2.3 million. So very pleased about that. Concludes my
Very
report.
nice. It's great news. Thank you. Now we'll hear from individual directors regarding the announcements of upcoming events. Directors have upcoming events. Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to announce that AARP is sponsoring a safe driving, defensive driving class Saturday, weather permitting, at 132 Abbott Place. And this does qualify for a discount on your car insurance. To sign up is 501-520-1020. In case of inclement weather, there will be another date assigned, but currently it's scheduled for Saturday, January 11th at 8 a.m.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Any other announcements of upcoming? Director Holliday.
Thanks. I am happy to announce the 2025 Martin Luther King Jr. Parade that will take place downtown on Monday, January 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The parade will take place between Whittington and Malvern Avenues down Central. It will be led by Grand Marshal, our very own Janice Davis, who has done a lot of volunteering here in the community, so we're excited for her. It's helping celebrate the 30th anniversary of the National Day of Service. And then following the parade, Dr. Audrey Chapman, pastor of New Faith Christian Ministries, will speak at Horner Hall at the Convention Center. For more information, you can contact Diablo Coleman at 501-762-6103. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to share with everyone the upcoming, or actually the 27th annual Hot Springs NAACP number 6013, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Prayer Breakfast. That's Saturday, January 18th at 8:30 a.m. It will be held at the Hot Springs Convention Center, which is located at 134 Convention Boulevard. The Hot Springs NAACP Unit 6013 proudly announces its 27th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Prayer Breakfast, set to take place again Saturday, January 18th at 8:30 in the morning. The distinguished keynote speaker will be Dr. Javon Long, who is Assistant Director for Student Development and Access Services at Stephen F. Austin State University, and he will be delivering an inspiring address. Tickets are available now. They're $40 per person or $400 for a table of 10. Ticket sales end this Saturday, January 11th. No tickets will be sold at the door. For more information of ways to get your ticket, you can call 501-463-6566.
Very good. Thank you. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you. At this time, we'll address those items in the consent agenda. We do these in mass, and they do not merit individual discussion, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Director Garcia? Second by Director Trustee. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. Consent agenda is adopted. Before I move into old business, I know that we'll have a number of people speaking in a number of areas here through the balance of the meeting. We welcome your input. We provide 3 minutes of time per person, and we really want to try to adhere to that. We are somewhat lenient. I am somewhat lenient in giving you an opportunity to kind of provide a closing comment if you exceed your 3 minutes, but it's important that we all pay special attention to that time frame. Going forward here, we'll consider ordinance O-24-38. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title. Director Garcia, seconded by Director Webb. Have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Council, read by title.
Ordinance O-24-38, an ordinance fixing the rates for services rendered by the wastewater system of the City of Hot Springs, repealing ordinances number 5978, 6354, and 6428, and prescribing other matters related thereto. That concludes your third and final reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Director Trustee, second by Director Garcia. And staff report will be provided by Ms. Karen Scott, Finance Director.
Mayor, before we start with the presentation, I do want to point out that Section 3 of this proposed ordinance established an effective date of the rates to be February 1, 2025. This is January 7th. This went through a first, second, and third reading, and so in order to have an appropriate effective date, I would ask the mayor to entertain a motion to amend so that your discussions, if any there be, will be relative to rates going into effect March 1, 2025.
Director
Move to
Garcia.
amend.
We have a motion by Director Garcia. Second by Director Trustee. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Director Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The wastewater system of the City of Hot Springs is in need of capital improvements and betterments to comply with outstanding consent administrative orders, as well as providing for the capacity needed for future growth of the system. The estimated cost of the needed capital improvements and betterments is approximately $68 million. Revenue bonds will be required to fund these improvements. In your packet, there is a copy of presentations that were made to the board on November 5th by Willdam Financial Services and Cruz and Associates. At ACA 14235-223 provides that the rates or charges shall be sufficient in each year for the payment of the proper and reasonable expenses of the operation, repair, replacements, and maintenance of the system, and for the payment of the sums required to be paid into the sinking fund for the payment of bonds and interest thereon. Willdam Financial Services did do a 2024 wastewater rate analysis and long-term financial plan for us, and it does indicate the need for an increase in rates sufficient to fund the necessary revenue bonds for the capital improvements and betterments required of the system. The proposed rate increases will generate the revenue necessary to fund debt service for the bond issue in the principal amount of $69.8 million. Tonight, we have Mr. Jackson here with Wildan Financial Services, who is prepared to do his presentation again, explaining the rate increase that he is recommending. We also have Mr. Bob Wright from Cruz and Associates and Craig Johnson from Christ Engineers.
Very good. Thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. My name is Dan Jackson. I am Vice President of Wildan Financial Services, and I serve as the City of Hot Springs Water and Wastewater Rate Consultant. The year 2025 represents my 20th anniversary of service to the City of Hot Springs. I just wanted to start out by expressing my appreciation for the faith and confidence that you have shown in myself and my firm over these past 2 decades. During these past 2 decades, the city has been faced with a lot of very difficult decisions. Your water and sewer system costs have gone up, as they have for utilities all across the United States. Remember, you try to run your water and sewer operation like a business. Like any business, you have costs that you incur, and you want to be reimbursed for those costs. You produce a product. Water service, wastewater service is a product, like a McDonald's hamburger or a gallon of gasoline or anything else. And as we've all seen, inflation and other factors push costs up over a period of years. After all, I mean, cost of everything goes up by at least 3% a year just due to inflation alone. Over the past couple of decades, you have made some very, very difficult decisions to ensure that the financial integrity of your water and wastewater system continues to be sound. These have not been very popular decisions. After all, nobody wants to pay more for anything at any time for any reason. But the question becomes is, what are we asking our ratepayers to contribute? Is it going to benefit us, and is it going to benefit the city? And one of the true advantages of running a water and sewer operation is that the money that is contributed by the ratepayers directly goes into the future of the city itself. This rate plan that I'm going to outline to you tonight for the wastewater system will enable the city of Hot Springs to invest $68 million in the future of its community. These are for assets that are going to be used by yourself, your children, your grandchildren, and maybe even your great-grandchildren as well. It will improve environmental quality. It will improve the quality of service. But nothing in life is free, and everything comes at a cost. And one of the advantages we have in running the City of Hot Springs system is that because you have made the difficult decisions in the past, the financial impact of this latest rate proposal is actually going to be much more minimal than you might otherwise have anticipated. I work for a lot of utilities around the country. I work for over 100 utilities in Texas, Arkansas, Arizona, all across the Southwest. What many utilities do is they think they're doing their ratepayers a favor by holding rates down year after year after year after year. And then they find they have to do something like a $68 million wastewater project, and in order to issue the debt to finance those projects, they have to do like a 30% rate increase. And guess what? People don't like 30% rate increases. They don't like big changes. Whereas, had the utilities been gradually adjusting their rates year by year to meet their operating cost increases and anticipate the need for future capital improvements, then the financial impact of these new projects would be minimal. That is the situation City of Hot Springs is in tonight. I've just got a couple of slides I want to go over with you, just to go through some of the background and to explain the magnitude and the impact of the rate proposal itself. So, as I said, for the last 20 years, we've been doing these periodic studies. In the last study that we did in 2021, we did a 10-year forecast of what your cost would be. Well, forecast is not a guarantee. It's a prediction based on a series of reasonable assumptions. Nobody can tell the future with perfect accuracy, particularly the last few years, that's for sure. So we went back in this latest analysis, and we looked at where we are as we posed where we thought we would be a couple of years ago, and for the most part, we pretty much hit it. Some of your operating expenses were a little bit higher. Inflation's been a little bit higher the last couple of years than what we anticipated it would be. But your account growth, most of your growth has been pretty much in line. But there is one aspect of water and wastewater service that is going to have the biggest impact on a rate proposal, and that is your capital improvement plan spending. I said earlier that you run your operation like a business, and that is true. Operating costs go up. You know, inflation causes that for the most part. But one of the things about a water and wastewater system is it costs millions of dollars to build a system to service the population. It costs millions of dollars to build a wastewater treatment plant, to build a water treatment plant, to build all those lines, to convey the sewage through your city, and to do it in a manner that is environmentally sound. Well, guess what? Like any asset, those wear out over time. They need to be expanded as the city grows. And so the additional burden that a utility has is not just paying for the increasing operating costs, but also to pay for these capital improvements. Now, some utilities that I work for have incredibly low rates, and they have low rates because they don't do any capital improvements. Is that a better way to run a system? Because what happens is the quality of the service and the reliability of the service declines. It's sort of like saying, you know, I could save $100 by not changing the oil in my car. Yeah, you could. But then a year later, your engine's going to blow out. What the city of Hot Springs has always done is it has proactively invested in the future and made the upfront cost to save the burden of even higher costs in the future. The biggest factor impacting this current rate plan is a $69.8 million bond that is anticipated to be issued to fund your new wastewater capital improvement plan. Just a quick background on the system itself. You have about 27,000 connections. Pretty big system here. One of the things that's a little unique about the city of Hot Springs is that you have a pretty significant amount of customers who are outside your city limits. You've got about 17,000 wastewater customers inside your city limits and about 10,000 customers that are outside. That adds to your costs. And all of that has been taken into consideration in the development of this financial plan. Now, I know these numbers are a little bit low, a little bit small. I have trouble reading them myself. That's why I need this page up here, and I need my reading glasses too. But this summarizes the wastewater capital improvement plan. You can see that the interceptors that have to be overhauled and replaced. You see the pump station improvements. You see the solids dewatering and conveying. You see the other projects. You can see the $68 million of improvements that is scheduled to be done. Now, I'm no engineer. I'm just a finance guy. But I can tell you that without that, based on my experience with utilities around the country, this is about what you would expect to see for a utility this size. Wastewater and water systems are very, very expensive. They're expensive to build, they're expensive to maintain, and they're very expensive to overhaul. And that is just an unfortunate fact of doing business. Now, this colorful chart right here shows you our latest forecast of the total wastewater cost of service over the next 10 years. Each bar represents 1 year. The bars are in different colors too. The green portion of the bar chart is your operating expenses. As you anticipate, they're going to go up. Cost of everything goes up by 3% a year, and a good financial plan anticipates that and anticipates these additional costs in the future. The red is your funds transfers to the general fund. It is a common and accepted practice in the utility industry for a utility fund to reimburse the general fund for the services that the general fund supplies to the utility fund. You know, accounting, billing, city management, police, fire, protection, all of that. All of that comes at a cost to the city. And so the utility reimburses the cost through a transfer. That is not a profit. It is a transfer to reimburse you for costs incurred. The blue portion is your current debt. The utility has some current debt. A little bit is going to roll off in the next few years, but you do have a certain amount of current debt. But you can see the dark blue. That is the new debt for the capital improvement plan. That is what is increasing your costs, and that is why we see the need to recommend a new rate plan for the city. So let's cut to the chase. What is the rate plan? The city of Hot Springs has, for almost the entire time I've been working for you, has had a policy of doing approximate 3% annual increases in the wastewater fund, wastewater cost of service and rates every year. Very common. Again, that's actually less than the national average. The national average water and wastewater increase is 5 to 6%. So your 3% increases have actually been a little bit less than the national average. However, with the imposition of this new capital improvement plan, we're going to recommend over the next couple of years that you do a slightly higher adjustment. Now, People pay for wastewater service in two ways. They pay a base charge each month, and then they pay a rate per 1,000 gallons of sewage service that they contribute to the system. We recommend that you do a $2.50 monthly increase for your 5/8 inch customers, which is the vast majority of your customer base, each year for the next 3 years. So you increase the base charge by $2.50 in 2025, 2026, and 2027. We then recommend that you go back to the 3% increases in 2028 and 2029. We also recommend that you continue the 3% annual volumetric rate increases for each year for the next 5 years. So as you can see, this plan is only a little different from what you've been doing over the last 15 to 20 years. What is the difference? Well, first of all, this is the actual rate plan itself. Again, numbers are a little bit low, but I'm going to show you a more important chart next, and that is the impact on your average customer. You can see that right now, the minimum charge for wastewater service for a 5/8 inch meter, which is virtually all of your residential customers, is $24.48. We recommend that rate go to $26.98 effective. Originally was intended to be effective in January, but now, as Mr. Albright indicated, would be in March. And then another $2.50 increase in January in 2026, and a $2.50 increase in January 2027. You can see the volumetric rate increases would go up by 3% a year each year. Now, if you've got a larger water meter, you would see a larger increase. Once again, that is very common in the industry. If you have larger meters, you're exerting more demand and you're contributing more to the system, so your bill is going to be significantly higher. But for over 90% of your customers, the monthly base charge would go up by $2.50 a month for each of the next 3 years. Now, what is the impact of this? What does this mean in terms of what people would pay? This is probably the most important chart in my presentation. It's also, thankfully, one of the last. Right now, the average wastewater customer uses about or contributes about 5,000 gallons of sewage into the system a month. Some do a little bit more, and obviously businesses do a little bit more than that. But the vast majority of your wastewater customers are about 5,000 gallons a month. Right now, that customer who uses 5,000 gallons of sewer service pays $51.14 for sewer service. Under this plan, their monthly bill would go up by $3.30, $2.50 on the base charge and 80 cents on the volumetric charge. It would go up by $3.32 a month in 2026. It would go up by $3.35 a month in 2027. But in 2028 and 2029, it would only go up by about $1.80 a month each year. So that person who pays $51.14 right now would pay $54.44 in 2025, and eventually by 2029, that rate would go up to $64.84. So it would be about a 5.5% to 6% increase for each of the next 3 years, and then it would be a 3% increase in each year after that. So it's really not much more than what you've been doing over the last 20 years. And I can't emphasize this enough. What do you get in return for this additional contribution? You get $68 million of investment in the future of the city of Hot Springs. Also, keep in mind that water and wastewater rate increases are a fact of life around the country. The American Water Works Association anticipates that the cost of water service and wastewater service is going to triple in the next 15 years. I know nobody wants to hear this. We don't want it to be higher, but it is going to be higher. The utilities that address this immediately and plan for it are the utilities that will succeed in this century. The utilities that ignore these cost trends are the ones that are going to be in financial and operational trouble in the next several decades. And one of the great privileges of working for Hot Springs is that you have always been very proactive in dealing with these issues and ensuring that your system continues to run properly. Now, a final thing to look at is when you look at water and wastewater together, how do your rates compare to your neighbors? I don't always like to do rate comparisons because it's not always fair to do so. Because in the first place, 30 to 40% of utilities in the United States charge rates that do not cover their costs. They subsidize their rates from their general fund. So just because a neighboring utility's rates are lower than yours, it doesn't necessarily mean that their costs are lower. It might mean that they're using their general fund to subsidize their water and sewer fund. Well, as a politician once said, the problem with subsidies is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. And that's the problem a lot of these utilities, a lot of these other cities that are subsidizing their rates are facing. So it's not always a fair comparison to compare. But even when you do that, your rates are pretty much in line with what many other cities in the state of Arkansas are charging for service. Right now, you charge $80.93 for 5,000 gallons of water and wastewater service. That bill under this plan would go up in 2025 to $85.13. The state average in Arkansas is about $67 a month. You have a lot of utilities that are lower than that, but you have utilities that are significantly higher than that too. The highest charge in Arkansas is $198 for that same amount of service. So, are your rates disproportionate to what other people are paying? No, they're not. They're about where you would expect them to be. You're higher than some, you're lower than others. But you have a couple of things that these other utilities don't. You have a very healthy financial system right now. A lot of other utilities don't. You have investment in the future. A lot of other utilities don't. And you have put yourselves in this position because you have been willing to make the decisions that have been necessary to be made to ensure that your utility remains healthy. So I just want to summarize this in my final chart here by saying that it is never an easy thing to do to ask people to pay more. As I said earlier, nobody wants to pay more for anything. But the question becomes, will it be beneficial for this rate plan to be in place? You might ask, how could it possibly be beneficial to ask people to pay more for wastewater service? Well, it's beneficial for the following reasons. One, as I keep saying, it will enable you to invest in the future of the community. Two, it will ensure that the utility that you have right now, that you pass to future generations, will be as financially healthy as the one you inherited. And three, it will ensure that future operating costs and increases, and they will happen, will be covered. And you will be able to issue the debt that you need to issue in order to preserve your environment and to continue to provide a very healthy level of service. I really appreciate your putting up with me as I drone on as long as I have, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Directors have any questions? Director Dobbs Smith.
I noticed on your page 10 of your slides, you showed Little Rock had an outside rate and an inside rate. Are the ones that you show for Hot Springs combined?
That is just the inside rate for Hot Springs.
That's just the inside rate. And then the other question was, these rates that are shown here, do those reflect their 2025 increases? Or is it just ours? I see ours is on there, but theirs aren't.
This was compiled about 2 or 3 months ago, so it would be only 2024. Okay. So the first thing you would have to do is probably increase everybody by about 6%, because that's what everybody's doing.
So I see when you show the current rate, the 24 rate, we are pretty much right in there, except for the Jonesboro, a couple of others, and some of the ones that I know have problems. But when you show the 25, we edge on up in there to the higher tier.
See, that's why it's always very difficult to do rate comparisons. The only real benefit of a rate comparison is to determine whether or not you're really out of proportion to what other people are paying. Now, whoever this utility is that's charging $198, that's probably a legitimate question to ask, is why are they charging so much? But here in the city of Hot Springs, you're within a few dollars of just about everybody else. And so that says that you are certainly not burdening your ratepayers when you compare what people are paying for this service in the state of Arkansas.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Dan, first, I just want to thank you for your 20 years of service to the city of Hot Springs.
Thank you.
I don't want you to think that I'm questioning anything of your service to the city with the questions that I'm going to ask you to. I feel like you're highly intelligent, and I think you do a good job with what you're faced with based on the current economy and the current interest rate trends and the bond that's being issued to municipalities. just so that we're on the same page, because I've looked through what was shared with us in a packet, and then also the numbers that were presented here tonight, and then also your slides. The bond that is on the table here tonight, is the official number 69.8 million? Is it 68 million, or is it 67.9 million? The slides have 67.9. I've heard the number 68. I actually heard 70 before, and then the number 69.8 came out too. So where are we on the official number of the bond?
And Bob Wright with Cruz and Associates, City's Financial Advisor and Director Webb, that's a good question. The construction fund, the deposit into the construction fund that the city will spend has been the same. The varying numbers that you see, we presented very preliminary numbers on the bond financing back in October, November. Those change on a daily basis. So we deposit the monies. There are costs of issuance that are added into the transaction, and then the structuring of the financing itself. If we go forward with this plan, when we come in with the actual financing, you'll see the detailed numbers of that. But actually, how you structure the debt changes and varies that par amount, the borrowing amount, depending on the market. So you're going to continue to see varying numbers, but the construction amounts remain the same.
So would that have any impact on rates?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I heard you mention too, Mr. Dan, that inflation pushed cost up.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be implying that inflation is high currently?
I think inflation now is back to where it has been at historical levels, but in the 2021 to 2023 timeframe, it was certainly significantly higher than it is today.
So-
And that had a negative impact on the city's budget, not just the utility budget, but everybody's budget.
Yeah, supplies,
Mm-hmm.
everything. So how does inflation affect a bond that's being issued to a municipality? Would interest rates be lower if inflation were lower? Would the ratepayer cost increase be lower than the current suggested ratepayer cost if the inflation rates were lower?
Yes. I can tell you, I'm a graduate of the University of Chicago Business School, and we are what's known as monetarists. We believe that that interest rates are directly tied to inflation. That if inflation goes up, interest rates go up. If inflation comes down, interest rates come down. Because an interest rate is based on an inflation plus a risk premium. And so yes, if inflation comes down, if it continues to come down in the coming months and years, it will definitely have a beneficial impact, not just for the city of Hot Springs, but for all of us as individuals as well.
So could that mean then that if inflation were lower, say in a few months, that the ratepayer cost increase per month could be lower too?
I think that's going to be a bit of a stretch. I think I mean, inflation would basically have to zero out, and I just don't see that happening. It may come down a little bit, but the other thing is you have to have a little cushion in any rate plan as well to take into consideration any unexpected increases or decreases. So even if inflation turns out to be a little bit less than what we anticipated, I would not necessarily recommend adjusting the rate plan, because for all we know, there could be a major oil crisis or a crisis in the Middle East in October of next year, and oil prices and inflation could shoot back up. And so for that reason, I think it would probably be best to keep, unless there's really a very significant zeroing out of inflation, I would not recommend changing the rate plan.
Tax exempt versus taxable. If the tax exempt percentage of a bond is high, would that be beneficial for the municipality? Would that be a good thing? If we've got a high tax exempt rate on a bond that's being issued, would that be good for a municipality?
A high tax exempt rate?
Right. Percent. Like, for example, looking at these numbers here, with, let's just say, 68 million for this bond, it's my understanding that about 24 million is taxable. 44 million is tax exempt, so that's 65% that's tax exempt versus 35% that's taxable. What might happen to the rates that rate payers have to pay as a cost increase to acquire this bond if the tax exempt rates were higher for the municipality? Let's say if they were at 80%, would that have any kind of impact for what rate payers would pay?
Good question. I understand what you're saying. The easy and obvious answer is if rates are lower, that benefits the ratepayers. You can buy more of a house if your interest rate's lower on your mortgage. That's not, everybody understands that. What we are charged with from my perspective as the city's financial advisor is to try to protect the ratepayers and the impact on the ratepayers. If I knew what interest rates are going to be this time next week, I'd be sitting on a beach with a glass with a little umbrella the week after. I would be very rich. We don't know. General trends, you can talk with economists. We've got trading desk in New York. The underwriter has trading desk in New York. We've all got economists, and you can look at all sorts of projections, variations, such like that. If you look at,
Would you agree that, say, 2018, 2019, that the tax exempt percentages on long-term municipal state assurance bonds were at a higher percent on average than they are today?
in 2018, I'd have to go back and look. In 2021, we basically bottomed out, 20 and 21 coming out of the pandemic, supply chain issues and all that. So when we look at, just like the stock market has the Dow, and you can kind of track what's going on, or the S&P, whatever, however you want to follow the stock market, the bond market follows in lockstep with the treasury market. Those are the general interest rates. So when I look at the bond market, it's called the MMD, the Municipal Market Data Yield Curve. In 2021, the 30-year rate was a 1.32%, bottomed out. I mean, but that was the impact of what all was going on in, around the world.
That was AA?
That was on a AAA 30-year municipal market.
Okay.
So that's what the highest quality interest rate that you could, an investor could get a whopping 1.32% average on their tax exempt rate back in 2021. Today it's 3.89%. So that's 257 basis points higher than it was back during that pandemic. The Fed cut rates back on September 18th. The anticipation was they were going to continue to cut rates. And when the Fed cuts rates, those are short-term rates. Those are not for long-term rates, but those are short-term rates. The MMD, that long-term rate on that day when they cut was 3.5%. And again, it's 3.89 now, so it's 39 basis points higher. Your borrowing cost for a city is higher than it was when the Fed cut rates back in September.
How often do you see those rates fluctuate? Those
by
cut
the
rates?
second.
So they could come down, they could
By the
come up.
second. They could come down,
You
they could
just
go up.
mentioned it was 3.5 and then 3.89,
Yeah.
so.
So all of the analysis that we provided to staff, engineers, to Dan, and as we're looking again, we all understand that, hey, if we issue this debt right now, taxable and tax exempt, if we issue it right now and in 3 years rates were lower, could we have saved the ratepayers money? Absolutely. Rates are lower, your borrowing cost is lower. You have to also factor in, as he talked about inflation, and I've talked to your engineer, and the industry standard on capital improvements at projects like this is about a 5.9 to 6% annual increase in capital costs. That doesn't factor in the potential tariffs that are coming down the road for steel, pipe, things like that that could really greatly inflate this project. But part of our analysis before we stood up in front of the board months ago was, what can we do? What's the impact on the ratepayers right now? What's the impact if we go and basically gamble with their money and decide, let's wait 3 years and then issue, not this taxable debt, but let's issue today, let's issue the balance in 3 years. If the interest rates are the same as they are right now, interest rates don't move, and that project cost does inflate that 6%, which is what's going on in the industry, that would cost the ratepayers $3,093,000 in additional borrowing cost. If rates are up 100 basis points, for instance, that would cost the ratepayers $9.98 million. So we're trying to protect the bad side to the ratepayers, knowing that if rates do go down, we can chase the rates down. We can refinance. Since 2016, so in the last 8 years, on city debt,
It does cost money to refinance, doesn't it?
it does. Good question.
At what cost to refinance?
Since 2016, so in the last 8 years, just on the water and wastewater debt for the city, we have refinanced as rates have gone down, and we've saved the city, the ratepayers, $6.41 million net after the cost to do the refinance. So yes, there's no way to protect yourself if rates go up. If rates go up, it's coming on the ratepayers. We're going to come back with another potential rate increase because that borrowing cost is higher. If we do it all now, we're protecting the downside for the ratepayers, and if the rates do drop, like they've done in the past, the plan would be to come in and refinance at the lower rates.
Well, I appreciate your very thorough responses to those questions. I bring these questions up because I look at these tax exempt percentages, starting as far back as the first quarter of 2018. Are you familiar with SIFMA.org at all?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were. Well, that's where I got a lot of this data. And the first quarter of 2018, there was approximately $300 million that were long-term municipal state issuance bonds, and their tax exempt rate was right around 90%. This is coming from that site. That's tax exempt. 22 coming from Vanguard. Now this is nationwide, so it isn't quite apples to apples. It's a little bit closer to apples to oranges because the first was just Arkansas. Vanguard is nationwide, but on average, each bond was at 81% tax exempt. And then here we are with this bond that's being presented tonight to the board, and it's at 65% tax exempt. And we did just hear that if we've got a higher tax exempt rate, that does, or it could mean that the ratepayer cost increase could be lower. So wherever, we are on a political spectrum, it doesn't really matter, but the economy that was in place for America in 2018 and 19 was in a much better place than where we are now and where we've been the past 3 years. And with that administration coming back into office here in just a few more days, would it not be the advice of both of y'all? I know you look at a bond issuance probably from a different lens than I do, but if you were to look at it from protecting ratepayer cost increase, would it not be smarter for this board to just kind of pause this bond and wait and see what happens in 6 months and then come back and do another rate analysis based on where the tax exemption rates are in 6 months?
2 points, because some of the data that you pulled up, which is, there is a wealth of information out there that's available. In 2024, taxable debt, municipal debt, taxable debt, there was $25.73 billion worth of taxable debt issued by cities just like this. New York, Kentucky, Massachusetts. I mean, you go down the list and there's billions of dollars of taxable debt that is issued for all various purposes. So is this uncommon? Absolutely not. Does a taxable deal cost more than a tax exempt? Yes, the tax exempt rates are there to help supplement the interest rates for municipalities. That's the very reason why they are in existence. When you look at the one page that Dan showed as far as 3-year projects, 5-year projects, and when I look at that, my first reaction is, can we wait? Because there's projects not out there for 5 years. Those 5-year projects are starting the day that we close the transaction. Hot Springs, just like the majority of issuer cities out there, cannot enter into purchase agreements, contracts, anything like that if the money is not in place. You can't sit there and go, whatever the various aspects of this project, let's just say it's a generator or whatever it would be. You can't enter into a purchase order saying that, hey, the debt will be there in the future to be able to pay for it. So you've got to have that debt and the money in place to be able to do that, to get these projects started. But your point is, should we wait? You know, is it prudent to sit and wait 6 months, you know, and then see what happens? That's part of the analysis that we've provided well before we stood up in front of the board, that we provided to the board. We don't know what rates are going to do. If everybody assumed that it was going to flip over to Republican, which it did, everybody assumed that interest rates were going to go down. They did not. The meeting this last month, when we were here, we didn't speak because you were on the second reading, but the reading, I looked at the rates that day, and by the time I got down to Hot Springs, 3.5 hours later, municipal rates were up 6 basis points. They move every single day. So when I showed the staff, Dan, engineer, that if we don't, we can do it right now because we know what the rates are going to be. If we decide to gamble with the ratepayers' money and wait, and if we call it wrong, if the project cost goes up, if rates go up, you know, when you see a $9.9 million cost to the ratepayers, you know, staring you in the face, you don't gamble with their money. You know, so you have to look at what we know right now, what the economy, the interest rates, the borrowing costs, the rate study that he's presented, and you got to make the best decision for, you know, what is the best for your ratepayers. So we know the project has to be done. Can't avoid that. The longer you wait, the potential there for additional cost is, I mean, that's what comes into play. That's why we recommend moving forward.
Thank you.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. And when you made the presentation to us previously, you went through the taxable and the tax exemption.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you just summarize that simply, why we have those two categories? Because with, like you mentioned, what we have to do and what was displayed on 3- and 5-year projects, some of the lead time on these orders is over 2 years currently. The longer you wait, the more that extends out, was my understanding. But you had given us a summary of, we've got these two categories, exemption and tax, and you did a great job on summarizing why we were needing to do that and have the lowest risk that we could for our city.
The difference in the tax exempt and the taxable, the IRS basically, when we issue debt for the city, in general, you've got 24 to 36 months to spend those construction funds, that if you, whatever interest you earn in the construction fund, because the day we close, you're going to start earning money in that deposit of $69 million. So the IRS basically after 1986 and prior to that said, if you're earning more than what this supplemented interest rate is, if you're earning more, you're going to give that excess back to the IRS. That's the rebate. I'm not going to mention it in public, but we're currently working with a city right now that issued debt in 22 that did not spend their money in time, and we're looking at over $1 million they have to give back to the IRS because of the excess earnings. So when we looked at the project with Craig, the engineer, and staff, and how quickly they could spend these monies, and you have to have what's called a reasonable expectation that you can spend it within the IRS timeframe, because of the lead times that you mentioned that took that out and over that 3-year period. That's where you have to be conservative and say, we don't want to face a risk to face the IRS to say, we borrowed all of this tax exempt knowing that some of this was going to carry out 5 years, and you run the risk they come in and tell you the whole deal has to go taxable, and you've got tens of millions of dollars you're going to pay back to the investors and the IRS. You don't want to face that. So it's a conservative approach to say, we know we can spend this $45 million in 3 years, and we know the balance, the $25 million, has to be done. It started day one, but the lead time pushes it beyond 3 years. That takes the risk of the IRS coming back and penalizing us to the tune of millions. And it gets this project started. You know, if we wait 6 months or if we wait 3 years to do the balance tax exempt, that's where that additional cost to your ratepayers comes into play.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you for the detailed presentation. Much appreciated. We have a number of individuals who have signed up to speak on this ordinance. We'll begin with Ellen Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please. And just for everybody's, just remember a 3-minute rule. There'll be a little clock over here on the pictures on the TV screen. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Ellen Carpenter, and I live at 503 Wilson Lake Lane in Hot Springs. The proposed increase in fees being considered today will fund projects necessary to protect public health and safety. I know that an increase in fees for city services is not something residents welcome, but the projects to be funded have to be completed for the public good. 1/2 of all the sewage collected by the city is supposed to go to the Gulf Pump Station, where it can be pushed to the Davidson plant for treatment. Unfortunately, there have been gaping holes in the city's collection system for a very long time. So the sewage hasn't been getting to where it's supposed to go, which is the Davidson plant. Instead, it's been released to Gulf Creek, which flows into Spencer Bay of Lake Catherine. The city's working on this appalling problem, but the work hasn't been completed. In 2023, almost 46 million gallons of untreated sewage washed into Gulf Creek and Spencer Bay. In 2024, last year, another 52 million gallons of sewage entered Gulf Creek and Spencer Bay. Whenever there's a sewer overflow, everything that is flushed down the commode goes into the waterway. And it is disgusting to see and smell this pollution. But even worse, the release of untreated sewage into recreational waterways creates a potential public health threat. To address its wastewater problems, the city entered into 2 different consent administrative orders with the Division of Environmental Quality. Most of the fee increases in the proposed ordinance you will be voting on will be dedicated to continuing the work needed to fix the overflows into Gulf Creek. But unfortunately, stopping those overflows is not where the work ends. The millions of gallons of untreated sewage previously flowing into Gulf Creek will be routed to the Davidson plant, which then discharges treated effluent into Lake Catherine. This is only a good solution if the plant receives the upgrades needed to properly handle this added inflow. If crucial upgrades to the treatment plant are not funded, then you are simply moving the problem from Gulf Creek to the main channel of Lake Catherine. No matter how you slice it, Lake Catherine was never intended to be an integral component of the city's wastewater treatment system. It is a valuable recreational water body used by residents and visitors alike for fishing, swimming, and boating. So one of the CAOs requires the city to stop the overflows into Gulf Creek. The other CAO, Consent Administrative Order, requires the city to fix other overflows and complete upgrades to the Davidson treatment plant so it can meet the permitted effluent limits. The failure to meet any final deadline in these CAOs or to complete the work required to put the wastewater treatment system to rights will not only threaten future development, it will place the city in an untenable regulatory posture and continue to endanger the public. I'm here to ask you to adopt ordinance number 02438 because the proposed fee increases are needed to fund projects that will protect public health and safety and ensure the city's wastewater system complies with state and federal water pollution laws. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this proposed ordinance.
Appreciate your comments. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bart Stafford. Mr. Stafford, please come forward, restate your name, address, and district, please.
Yes, I'm Bart Stafford, live at 900 Prospect and District 1. It's interesting as I listen to this discussion, as we tend to focus on the financial end of what needs to be done here. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes, that's clear, or higher rates. Nobody wants to do that. But if we're really going to have this conversation with the sense of urgency that it deserves, we need to have a 55-gallon drum of sewage sitting right here, because that's what some people are having to deal with these sewage overflows. So the reality is, we have to do this project. I mean, I frankly don't see any way around that. It's a responsibility of the city to protect the health and safety of our residents. It's something that has to be done. So we're just talking about when and under what circumstances. The question about timing, I think, is just one that it's not really helpful, in the sense that it is just essentially gambling on you're going to get a better situation later. And in the meantime, while we're gambling, that 55-gallon drum is getting more and more full of sewage that should be flowing out into, staying in our system rather than flowing into Lake Catherine. So I personally feel, as a taxpayer, a ratepayer, I'm not happy about the increases, but I would be really not happy if this doesn't go through and we continue to have this problem and it becomes a deliberate choice that the board makes to keep this project from going forward. Please support this bond issue. Nobody's going to like it. It may have some short-term benefit to try to put it off. Don't do that, please. I mean, this is a project that has to be done. We're just talking about when and the details. Just asking you not to gamble with the health and safety of our citizens, and frankly, on the financial side of it as well. So thank you for your time.
Any questions of Mr. Stafford? Thank you. Mr. David Sellers, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hey, I'm David Sellers. I want to address the pause. These projects, they've been out there since like 2015. It's documented. You know, it's really got bad when the line busted. I mean, it's solid waste. There's condoms, tampons everywhere. It's everywhere. I can show you pictures if you want to see it. You probably don't. But going back to 2015, I mean, it's tons. There's tons of documentation on this stuff, and looks like the city ran out of money. They took that pause, and inflation hit, and here we are. You know, we're back at the table, you know, trying to get more money. So I don't know what a pause is going to do. So it's going to have to be done. There are fines on the consent order. July the 4th, I believe it would be $1,000 a day. There's a $51,200 that would be immediately in effect. You know, I hope you guys do this. We don't want to, you know, we're with you guys to try to make this thing happen. You know, the taxes are bad. I've got 2 properties. One bill is $120. My other bill is $30 because I have a septic tank on the other property. But, you know, this is public health. This is what, you know, the city does. I mean, civilization. It's basic stuff.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dayton Myers, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the board, city manager, city attorney, and city clerk. My name's Dayton Myers. I live 110 Jameson Lane, Unit C2, and I live in the county. I want to thank y'all for having this on 3 readings so that everybody's had time to think about it and have input if they choose to head to come up here and say anything. I had the pleasure of meeting with our city manager on two different occasions over the past 3 weeks. Once we met with Craig from Christian Engineers, and Bill and I did, and we went out and toured, we went over some of the projects here, and we went out and toured the Davidson Treatment Plant and a couple of the other sites, the Gulf of Pump Station, the Hot Springs Creek Pump Station. And then the second meeting was last week with Bob, and we did that over Zoom, and we talked about the bond side of this. And I echo some of the thoughts of some of the people that have spoken before me. My conclusion is that this can has been kicked down the road by previous city managers and previous boards of this city, and the road must end here tonight. We have got to get this work done. It's unfortunate that because of those prior city boards and city managers that were unwilling to take action, that we're sitting here tonight facing the $68 million bond and this exorbitant rate increase. I've always believed that you can't be critical of something without a solution. So that's why I do not support not going forward with these projects at this time. They have to be completed. However, you know, the word public health's been thrown around. I'm the new chairman of the Quorum Court's Public Health, Safety, and Welfare Committee. And looking at the projects that are going to be done, I may be wrong, I'm not an engineer, but I was looking at it. Most of the stuff that we're doing, or that y'all are doing, should you pass this and then pass the bond either in next month or in March, whenever, is going to benefit the residents of the city of Hot Springs. Most of it is actually not going to benefit the residents of the unincorporated area that are already being charged that 50% premium. So I'd suggest, since we have no voice as far as a vote, none of you are elected by anybody that lives in the unincorporated area, as far as I'm aware. And, you know, we're paying 50% more. We're subsidizing your plan. You know, it's noted that, I think, what was it, 10,000 of the 27,000 wastewater accounts are in the county. Well, if they're paying 50% more, think about how much more the unincorporated area customers are actually contributing to the system. So I think it's only fair that if an increase were to be adopted in any form, that the same increase for this, I'm not talking getting rid of the 50% overall, but on this issue alone, I think that the city ratepayers should pay a little bit more and make the rate increase level for the city and county. That's what I propose. There's people out there that are working. I'm not working with them any longer to reverse anything that you do tonight, but I would ask that you please consider treating the county residents fairly, because they haven't been being treated fairly for decades. And I know it's been upheld by the Arkansas Supreme Court. If the case were to be brought again, it might be adjudicated a little bit differently. But with that, thank you for your time, and I give you all credit. Bill, I wouldn't want to have your job if they handed it to me, and same for you, the board of directors. Y'all are in a very difficult position here tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Myers? Thank you. That completes the list of those who signed up to speak. Discussion amongst directors. Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. There's been a great presentation and great comments and information provided to all of us this evening. And it was in 2011 that the city was assessed a fine, the initial fine, and the city was placed under its first administrative consent order. Initially, this was going to be a fine of close to $500,000. It was negotiated down to just over $100,000, I believe. And the projects and the improvements that were identified at that time did not include all of the projects and work and improvements that are included in this ordinance. It did appear that the previous city boards and perhaps the city manager at the time were not even made aware or became aware of all of the issues that the city faced in the wastewater system until it all came to a head with the environmental protection agencies of the state and health department. We got into this situation because we were not maintaining the proper maintenance and taking care of the wastewater system and funding the capital improvements that needed to be done. All of the projects identified in this ordinance have to be done. The longer we wait, the riskier it is, and we are, as has been said, putting more raw sewage into a water system. This is a public health issue. I believe that it is the right thing to do, to take the actions to put in this bond and to get this project started, and I support the passage of this ordinance. Thank you.
Director Holliday?
Thank you. Just real quick, because we've talked a lot about the bond and the rates, to be clear, for really more for the audience, this specifically is about the wastewater rates, and assuming that it passes, then that information will be put into the bond conversation that will come later. So just making sure that as we vote, that it's very clear that this is only about the wastewater rates, and that we will revisit that bond at a later date.
Any other comments, Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all those of you who were here tonight to speak. It's always great to have public input, whether you're for or against any resolution or ordinance that comes before the board. I love to hear your take on what's happening with our city government. As far as this ordinance is concerned, I mean, in my opinion, the projects have merit. The public health concerns have merit. The finances have merit too, and what kind of impact it can have on our residents and those out in the county. I value our city's proactive infrastructure oversight on wastewater services. I want us to complete these projects, to be in compliant with restrictions that have been imposed on us from previous oversight mismanagements that we don't currently have. I think we've got a city manager who is paying attention to what needs to happen to provide our residents with proper infrastructure and doing these types of actions in a timely manner. But I think we can get a better ratepayer-friendly bond if we hold up 3 to 6 months and allow the economy to return better interest rates and higher tax exemption percentages, which essentially means lower ratepayer cost increases. I am a no to tonight's ordinance. We should reevaluate in 3 to 6 months.
Any further comments or discussion from directors? Director Trustee?
Mayor, thank you. I have one question for Bob. Bob, where are rates today as compared to when they were in November? The information that we have. Did you update this for this meeting? Did you update these numbers?
I did not update.
Okay.
I mean, internally, yes, we did. I did not
Sure.
print out anything to bring, but rates are up since we first brought this to the board. Yes.
Okay. But the amount of deposit to the project construction fund is going to remain the same?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll adjust the other numbers as we need to based on the rates?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Pardon? City Manager, Mr. Burrows, would like to make a comment?
I certainly appreciate all the comments that we've heard tonight, but I want to leave you with the impression that over the past 12 years, we have made incredible strides in our wastewater system. Over the past 12 years, we spent about $110 million. The city has 3 major wastewater water basins, basically, 1 minor. We've got Stokes, Fairwood, Hot Spring, and then Gulf. Gulf is the oldest in our system. We, ironically, are taking care of Gulf last. When we started this, Craig, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, we had 25 chronic overflows. They were chronic. Every time it rained, you would see these overflows, and all of those are in low-lying areas, close to our lakes. Mm-hmm. So we started where we had the most chronic overflows, and that was in Fairwood, the Fairwood Basin. And we completed that project and then moved to Stokes. We've got one project that we're working on over at Hot Springs Creek, and then that one's going to be complete. We've already bought the pumps. We've got to have about $800,000 worth of work to retro that station and put those pumps in. And then we've got Gulfa. Nobody anticipated the 24-inch line collapsing, and that was a terrible time for the residents out there, a terrible time for Hot Springs. We immediately pivoted. We put that contract out. We got that particular line repaired. We're about halfway through with the additional pump station that we have there at Gulfa, so we're making good processes there. Ms. Carpenter mentioned earlier that we've got to do the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant as well. And you've heard me say this on many occasions, but we've got a 1970s plant with 2025 volume. We've got a $35 million project going on there, and we've done some other work in terms of tertiary filters. We've got a couple that are on this what we're going to refer to as the taxable items. That 3 and 5 years, that is only the way we have to secure the bonds. It has nothing to do with the work. The work on those projects are going to start when this bond hits the bank. Some of those have about 1.5 years of just design only. You know, we had a transformer that we needed for one of the pump stations, and that was 72 weeks out. Director Garcia, you mentioned the long wait times. 72 weeks out on a transformer. We were 104 weeks out on a 2 meg generator. So we've looked at that crystal ball. We know some of these things that we have to have, and we've ordered those. We ordered that generator 2 years ago. It's sitting at a plant waiting to ship. So I just want to leave this board and the audience and those that are watching at home. For the last 12 years, we've been working, and we've been doing what I would consider all we could do. We've got a lot of different contractors out there. We need these projects to complete that circle, and we've got till 2030 on some of these projects, but we don't need to wait. They're going to cost more in 2030 than they are today. We want to get on these, and if we can finish these at the end of 2028, that's even better. So, thank you.
Thank you. There being no further comments or questions, please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
No.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our first item under new business is to consider ordinance O-25-01, and I'll entertain a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title.
So move.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Webb. I got a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Council, please read by title.
Ordinance O-25-01, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 suburban residential to R3 low-density residential, and R3 low-density residential to C4 regional commercial open display zone district for about 18 acres, more or less, generally located at 1108 Higdon Ferry Road, amending the future land use plan map and to regional commercial center, and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Garcia. And our staff report will be provided by Planning Manager, Mr. Rick Stauder. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The applicant on this request is Mr. Austin Edling. He is with Kimley Horn, which is an engineering, planning, and design consulting firm, and the property owner is Kilman, Catherine, and Rowe Family Trust. This request seeks C4 zoning for 18 acres of land located northwest of the Higdon Ferry and Lakeshore Drive intersection. The property is currently zoned R2 and R3, has future land use classifications of residential low and residential medium high, and is located in Board of Directors District Number 4. The project name as listed on the application is Home Depot Hot Springs. The subject property consists of 3 contiguous vacant and undeveloped parcels. Adjacent and nearby land uses include, but are not limited to, single-family residential, convenience store with pumps, office, funeral home, nightclub, shopping center, religious institution, and medical hospital and offices. The C4 zone district concept and description describes in part, quote, C4 district should be located at major arterial interchanges so that traffic will not normally proceed into the densely populated areas of the city. The district allows for regional shopping centers and so-called big box developments. It is also appropriate for businesses requiring large areas of open display that require large amounts of land for product storage and traffic maneuvering. End of quote. Zoning change applications are required to address certain findings per Hot Springs Code Section 16-211E1. This application responds to required findings in the following three ways. Number one, it demonstrates compatibility with surrounding zoning and development. Number two, it's consistent with the objectives of the zoning code as the property is adequately sized and positioned to meet the requirements of the C4 zone district, and it responds to a significant change in surrounding physical, economic, land use, or other conditions with the completion of the Higdon Ferry Road widening project. If the property is rezoned to C4, the property would be afforded the complete list of permitted and conditional uses as detailed in the city's table of permitted uses. As a finding for this request, the application successfully demonstrate that the standards for favorable consideration have been met. Planning Commission was able to establish a basis for recommending approval to the Board of Directors as reflected in their Thursday, December 12, 2024, 9-0 unanimous vote. Therefore, the recommendation is that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance to amend the zoning map designating the subject property C4 and to amend the future land use plan map designating the property Regional Commercial Center. And Mr. Edling is joining us tonight via Zoom and is available should you have any questions of him.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Stoddard from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we have anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Nobody signed up to speak? Any questions of the engineer? Discussion amongst directors? You guys are easy. Call the roll.
Director Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Moving on to consider ordinance O-25-02. I'll entertain a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title. Director Webb, second by Director Garcia. I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Both same sign. Council, please read by title.
Ordinance O-25-02, an ordinance waiving competitive bidding and approving an agreement with Xylem View, Inc. for Phase 6 of the City of Hot Springs Water Loss Management Program pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated, Section 14-47-138. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Director Trustee, second by Director Webb. And our staff report will be provided by Monty Ledbetter, Utilities Director. Welcome.
I'll be short, hopefully. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, board members. We look forward to this project and kicking this off in 2025. Bringing this to you for to the first meeting for a reason, so this will give us time to get this project completed, hopefully this year. One of the goals for the utility department, of course, is to reduce water loss within the water distribution system. And we call that non-revenue water. This virtual demand meter areas that we're going to be talking about tonight, short for VDMAs. We've been working on this for the past 4 years, and we have started in 2001, and we've completed phases 1 through 6. In 2001 and 2002, we completed our areas of 7 through 14, and in phases 3 through 5 we completed in 2004. That gave us 19 total phases that we've completed, our VDMA zones that we've completed in the last 4 years now. What we're asking you to do is approve the next phase, which includes 12 new meters that will be installed in the last areas that we need of the city to complete the project to get 100% coverage. We'll need 8 of those in that area, and we're going to need 4 new meters on some of the new lines that we've laid from our treatment plant to Carpenter Dam Road to monitor those pipes as well. We've been very successful in monitoring our system with this, and it's been very helpful in finding leaks and detecting leaks in it in the areas where they're hard to find. So, with that, we're also going to be incorporating 50 new Allied meters that we're going to place around the city. We purchased those meters last year. We'll be incorporating those into this plan too. Those new meters allow us to sense pressure out in the system. So we'll be placing those in the system along with this project. I guess, the only thing I can think of that I've left unsaid is that, we've worked with Xylem for several years now. We started back in 2011 when we installed our AMI system. It was a census system, which is owned by Xylem. And we've worked well together and all through these 4 phases, the 5 phases that we've completed to date. So we just want to keep on with that same group. So I'm asking you to waive the competitive bidding and approve this agreement with Xylem for this phase 6 of our water loss management program. We did budget for these funds for 2025, and the cost of this is $350,000. And after you approve it, we'll hit the ground running.
Mayor,
I
just-
also have with us today some folks from Xylem. Sorry, Bill.
Just going to mention, these projects for 2021, 22, and 24.
Okay.
Previous projects.
All right. I have with us today 3 representatives from Xylem. Michelle Camp is out of the Austin, Texas area. We don't want to hold that against her, but I'm sure she's a Longhorn fan. Peter Kraft, he's out of the Denver area and traveled here today. And also Chris Duckworth is with us today. And they're all representing Xylem here today. They came in earlier, and we've been meeting today to plan ahead and prepare for this. So I just wanted to recognize them and thank them for coming in these weather conditions. So
Very good. The board members have any questions of Monty or any of the consultants? Director, trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Monty, is this the final phase, phase 6? Is this the final phase of this project?
yes, this will give us at 100% coverage.
Yeah.
Now, in the future, as we add lines,
Right.
we may need more meters. But right now, this gives us 100% coverage, and we should be able to complete that this year.
Okay.
Director
you.
Webb?
I was going to ask you that question too. How many phases are there, and how many?
Well, it was an easy one if you want to
Yeah.
ask it again.
I heard you the first time, so
Okay.
I appreciate it. The question I have, Monty, is moving forward, what is a lifespan, say, for VDMA or the meters that are going in? Now, this particular one, there's going to be 3 or 4 VDMAs and then 12 additional meters, correct?
Yes, sir. Sometimes we kind of tackled the easy line, outer line areas of the city first. So where it takes 1 meter to monitor a whole big area, that's great. But now we're kind of down in the center of town where we have multiple feeds in and multiple feeds out. So we need to be monitoring both, so we can compare those to the readings that we get from our customer meters in those areas. So that's the purpose of this, and the life of these is we maintain these. They are battery operated, so we have to change batteries on them, and we've just recently discovered they don't like cold temperatures. So I think we've changed 8 of them out within the last 2 weeks, but they've been running for a few years now. So
for even like the meters and the VDMAs that were I guess, implemented in phase 1 and all the previous phases before phase 6. Are replacements or parts still available today for those current phases? And how long do you anticipate Xylem having those parts and pieces available?
Well, great question, and we were concerned about that going into this project, and so we asked that question early on to make sure that we chose a meter that's not going to be going anywhere. And it's and Xylem stands behind their products, and that's one of the reasons we selected them to help us with this. It's not going to be a problem getting parts going forward. These are insertion meters, so if one goes out, we can simply pull it out, turn the valve off, and replace it with a separate one. And we do keep a couple of those in stock, and we also keep the batteries and things like that in stock. So thank you for the question.
Director Garcia?
Thank you. The completion of the prior phases has resulted in a early detection in identifying lost water, and over time, the percentage of lost water has continued to decrease for the city. Is there a goal of continued improvements percentage-wise after the completion of phase 6?
Yes, ma'am. We've looked at that, and a realistic goal for Hot Springs. I don't want to tie myself down, but I want to try to make a dent in it. Really,
Right.
I really want to. It's an older city. We have some pipes in the ground that are 150 years old, and still in operation, and that's going to be challenging, but. Because for every leak we fixed, a new one happens. And that's why we developed this system, is so we can monitor it 24/7, 7 days a week. It's not just a snapshot look
Right.
like a leak study. This is a leak study that's going on 24/7. And we're always monitoring, always watching. So our goal would be to try to get this down below 20% in the future. And we're not far from that, but, we've still got a little ways to go.
I
And it
remember
takes a
when
lot to move that needle.
When it was 35%, so that's a big improvement.
It's about, what, 18% nationwide, somewhere in there?
I think 18% nationwide. We're hovering around 24, so we want to continue to work, and we've reduced it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And to clarify for everybody, this phase 6, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. To clarify for everybody, this phase 6 essentially will have eyes on any and all water pipes throughout the city of Hot Springs, correct?
This will finish it. This will finish it up, and will
So if
allow
any
us
leak
to-
happens, it's going to pick it up
Yes.
within the city?
Yes, this will give us 100% coverage of watching these things. Right before the meeting started, I got a call, and, we had a leak. And these things are so sensitive that the alarms go off and it lets us know. And that is, I can't tell you how valuable that is. I never thought I'd see that day in my 37 years of doing this, that we would be able to detect leaks as soon as they happen. Usually we depend on people to call us, our pressure drops in the system, or somebody calls and says, hey, I'm out of water. Now we can detect that, and we can get right on it, usually within hours. So it's great technology. We're excited about using this, and it's going to be great for future
I
generations.
was just going to say, it's probably going to be highly beneficial going into Thursday and Friday of this week.
At Target.
Yeah.
Director Holliday?
Thank you.
Thank you. I just personally want to say I'm excited that we're getting to that point. I'm sure you remember not that long ago. I live in one of the oldest parts of town, and in doing my own work at my house, caused a leak in the street, which caused a leak down the street, which caused a leak down the street. So in the pipe they pulled out of the street, I can't believe we didn't see it before. But I can only imagine and find it, the time I've lived in my neighborhood, I found 3 leaks on 2 streets within walking distance of my house. The one of the work that I've done, and then also a home that used to have a meter that was removed, and the end of a residential line was open and looked like a spring coming out of the ground for My neighbor said about 10 years. So that's just one street. So I think if we're at 24%, I think if you just hang out on Whittington, we might get below that 20. But I love that this exists, and just seeing it in real time in my own neighborhood, I'm sure it's going to be huge. And we're spending a phenomenal amount of money to make water. It doesn't need to come up through the street.
Yeah, this
so.
project, I'm excited. It'll pay for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for continuing on this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Monty? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Moving on to consider ordinance O-25-03. Now entertain a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title.
So moved. Second.
And Director Trustee, second by Director Webb. Staff report will be, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance O-25-03, an ordinance amending ordinance number 6510 as it relates to the map depicting parking zones and rates. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Director Dobbs Smith, seconded by Director Webb, and staff report will be provided by Deputy City Manager, Mr. Lance Spitzer. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This particular item, as stated, is really trying to provide a little consistency to the previously approved parking rate zones. And what I'll do is, at the board's direction at the agenda meeting, there's actually a map A and B. So I'll address map A first, and then we'll move into the map B second. So for map A, additionally, what we're talking about is really three zones that to provide that consistency. They were inadvertently not regulated as they should be whenever the board adopted that parking rate zone. So we need to make those corrections to it. As I move from the north to the south end of the parking program area, we're talking about Canyon Court, which is a very short street next to the former Downtowner Hotel. I think it's the Howe Hotel. Very short there. That's 7 spaces. That was listed as unregulated free parking. It needs to be listed as secondary parking zone, which would be that $1 per hour zone. So as we further move to the south, we have Bridge Street, which is located very close to here. That's 6 spaces. That was listed as unregulated as well. That needs to be a priority zone, which has that variable rate zone that the board has previously approved. The final area that we're talking about is on Central, as is the intersection of Olive, or from Market to Olive Street. That's approximately 13 spaces, and it's parking on one side of the street. The other side, I believe, is Landmark Building, West Central Planning, etc. So it's just on one side of the street there. 13 spaces, that needs to be listed as priority parking. That's that variable rate zone. So those are the 3 corrections that we need to make to that parking rate map that was in your packet. The second map that the board had directed us to make some corrections to deals with parking here on Spring Street. Spring Street, from the section from Malvern as it moves up to Opera Street, was regulated parking. That was priority parking. At the board's direction, what we've done is taken from Malvern to Craighead Alley, keeping that regulated parking. So anything from Craighead Alley to the intersection of Opera Street would become unregulated parking. And of course, the priority spaces, those are variable rates. Approximately what we're talking about there, probably 24 spaces. We still need to stripe some of those spaces due to some of the paving that just recently occurred. So that's about 24 spaces that would go from a regulated fashion, part of the parking program, to an unregulated. I did mention at the top of the other 3 zones, that's approximately 20 to 24 spaces as well. 24 spaces is what we're talking about with map A. So map A and map B, they kind of deal with essentially the same amount of parking, just different locations. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions of Lance? Lance, the number of spaces from Craighead Alley to Opera, let's just say on the south side of the street, that's not 12 spaces, that's like 7, isn't it?
24 in total on both sides of the street.
But we're not talking about crossing Opera on my question. I'm just talking about
Yes.
because Opera Spring Street east of Opera was unregulated.
Correct.
anyway.
Yes, sir.
And all of Opera is unregulated.
Yes, correct.
So we're just talking about the spaces between, on both sides of the street from Craighead Alley to Opera.
Yes, sir.
And you're
That's
thinking
correct.
there's 12 on each side, or?
That's approximate, yeah. Yeah, from that end to basically from Craighead Alley as up to the intersection of Opera. Once it gets striped, I think we're looking probably 24 spaces approximately.
There's a couple of handicap there too.
Yeah, we do have some disabled parking too, located, I believe, out front of St. Luke's Church.
I saw a hand. Director Garcia?
Thank you. I had a procedural question, and to one of y'all or
Please
to
continue.
him regarding the alternative map B. Because the ordinance as it's presented has the original map, and if you want the alternative map B, then that requires an amendment.
It would, yes.
And is it appropriate to make that amendment at this time, or are there people signed up to speak that should speak first, or what's the proper procedure?
Well, personally, I think we're having a good discussion amongst directors and our presenter here, our staff report. So let's complete that and then figure out whether we go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from
Mayor.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, and I think I may have heard you mention something along these lines, Mayor, earlier when you were speaking to Lance, but this area on Spring Street, when was the last time you remember there being any meters or any kind of paid parking on this street?
It's been a while. I've been with the city almost 15 years, and I don't know that I remember having them there with any regularity. I think essentially they were more in that Hillwheely Plaza, but I do not recall in a good while.
So you're thinking at least 15 years there had never been any paid parking, and it's about 12 parking spaces on each side of Spring Street. The church itself, St. Luke, their parking lot, are you familiar with that parking lot? It's going to be on the west side of the church that butts up to like the playground area. About how many spots is in that parking lot?
That parking lot, I'd have to probably defer to the church, but yeah, probably 8, 10
Okay.
spaces.
It looks small.
And I think
And a
6
few
of those
are
may be
handicap.
Yes.
The parking lot due north of Spring Street, what can you share with the board about that parking lot? It's got like 100 spaces there. Who has ownership of that parking lot? Is that parking available to the public, or is it paid parking, or is it private parking?
That parking that I believe you're talking about goes with the federal courthouse, federal building. It's administered by Government Services Administration, GSA. We've visited with Park Service and some of the others on possibly using the space. It really never went anywhere. So at this point, it's for all intents and purposes, it's kind of off limits parking, just because we've never gotten a clear direction on if post business hours, if it's something that people could use. So we really didn't feel good about directing anybody to use that space or acting as if it was something that could be used.
You got questions over here? Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Lance.
Sure.
Lance, on both of the maps, where are the kiosks for Spencer's Corner, Malvern Avenue, going past 328, the other two lots. I don't see any kiosks south of the Spencer's Corner 1 parking lot.
Spencer's
Am I
Corner.
just missing them?
On the map, they should have an icon designated them. I do know there is one in the parking lot.
Right, I see them over here, but nothing over here.
Yeah, what do we have? Total 36 kiosks? 25? Yeah, 25 total kiosks. We're looking to order 6 more in this coming year. So really what you're seeing in that area, there probably is, the main kiosk is at Spencer's Corner. There is one in Hill Wheatley Plaza on the corner there. But
I see a couple on Central. I see the one at Spencer's Corner and 2 more on Central north of Bridge Street. But I don't see anything south from Convention Boulevard down to the Church Street parking lot. I mean, that's a long way to walk.
yeah,
Or
and
use the app.
Yeah, use the.
I know, you can use the app, but not everyone will know that immediately. And are there signs on those properties that this is paid parking now?
If they're not, there will be.
Okay.
The signage has the QR code, which will direct
Okay.
you to download the mobile application where you can effectively, do your parking payment session.
Right, okay.
Director
Thank you.
Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Lance, looking at attachment B or map B, which is what Director Garcia was referring to a minute ago, and I think we could even find a lot of what questions I'm going to bring up with you even on the original map, for example, but it looking at Spring Street on this attachment B map, how it is now being broken down, kind of Spring Street 1, Spring Street 2, with Spring Street 1 being the paid version. That's going to be between that alley and then Central kind of area, or the area closest to Central, and then moving at the alley back east, that's all free. Would it be safe to say that those kind of breakdowns are not that common for how we've laid out the downtown parking scheme? Because like Court Street, would it not be kind of following that same kind of pattern? We've got a Court Street 1 and a Court Street 2, with Court Street 1 being close to Central, it being paid, but then on that side of Exchange Street where Court Street 2 is, that's all free. And then you come back down south looking at Prospect Avenue, it got broken down into kind of 2 sections, with Prospect Avenue 1 being closest to Central, that's paid parking. Prospect Avenue 2, which is an area further outside of Central, that being free. So looking at what Spring Street looks like broken down in attachment B map, it looks almost like what we've already done with Court Street and Prospect Avenue. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, really, when you talk about the different zones, wasn't really a lot nothing magical about it. Hot Springs, the geography of it, as you move off Central and you go uphill, so to speak. Fountain Street's a good example, Court Street, Prospect especially. The further you moved from Central, really didn't expect a lot of people to make the hike. You know, the probably 400-yard hike up Prospect. If they're going to walk that far up, we had to start somewhere. So we really tried to break up some of those just based upon geography and the easy use. As you moved uphill, really, you may have some die-hard free parkers that are looking to make the hike, and they can be rewarded for it. But for the most part, as you stayed closer to Central, the flat portions, tried to make that regulated parking.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. What about this employee parking program? What about our employees? What about city employees? Will they be eligible to participate in that parking program?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're working through some of that now.
Okay.
Director Webb?
Just one final thought, Lance, that entered my head. You know, looking at Spring Street on an attachment B map, where we did break that down to offer those 20 to 24 spaces free in between the alley and then Opera Street. If we were to do that, and this, of course, to be accommodate St. Luke's and services that take place there at St. Luke's between Monday and Saturday, times that are, regulated for parking, and all of the multitude of community resource activities that take place there, would it still be free to everyone?
Yeah.
It isn't going to be regulated, right? So I mean, that's an important part to note too, right?
Correct.
Is that it isn't just going to be reserved to St. Luke's. This is free to everyone. So on a technical scale, anyone who chose to park in that parking spot could have access to it, whether they have any direct ties to St. Luke's or not. Correct?
That's correct. First come, first serve.
First come, first serve.
Yes, sir.
Public
Okay.
parking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just like it is now. Thank you.
That was an issue of my concern, because, people, if they're working in the Spencer's Corner area, anything within 100 yards, 200 yards of that, people say, hey, I'll just pull up there and walk down the hill and be at my place of business, place of employment. So there's no restrictions on others' use, regardless of what's going on at the church. If there was a parking meter there, paid parking, people would say, well, I'm not, for that same fee, I can be across the street from my place of employment. I don't have to walk. So there are some pros and cons on that, but I certainly understand the church's view, but there is no guarantee that those spaces are going to be there for them when they want them. Certainly, the majority of them will be there, but some will not. Any other, Director Holliday?
It's not a question. I was just going to say, it's kind of to Director Garcia's point, if we're sort of settled for a minute, I would rather hear public comment, because I think a lot of people are here to speak on Spring Street before we were to make any amendment.
A or B. That's fine. Everybody good with that? We'll go ahead and begin. We have just a few people signed up to speak. Pastor Mark Neighbors, please come forward and restate your name and address. And I know you have a little footnote here on your next to your name. So
yeah, I'm Mark Neighbors. I'm the priest and rector at St. Luke's, 228 Spring Street. That's District 1. I'm a resident of District 3. So I am here to speak in favor of MAP B, so the proposed amendment. St. Luke's has been here for 160 years, and that presents us with some difficulties, right? When St. Luke's was built, you would walk there, or you'd bring your horse and tie it up out front. Obviously, modern zoning laws were not in effect when St. Luke's was established in the 1860s, nor were they really in effect when the present building was built in 1926. So that presents us with some challenges. The mission of St. Luke's is to bring all people to unity to God and one another through Christ, and we do that in a few specific ways. Through worship. We've already mentioned worship here. The services we have morning and evening prayer Monday to Thursday. We have special services throughout the week. Christmas Eve, for example, was a weekday. We had a service on New Year's Day. We'll have services throughout Holy Week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And of course, we have funerals and weddings, right? And our worshipers certainly need a place to park. We also do outreach. Our reputation for outreach is well noted through shower ministry, through utility assistance. We serve a lot of folks, and that requires both volunteers and paid staff, and we're really volunteer-driven, volunteer-heavy. And the folks who come to us looking for help need a place to park, and if they can't pay their water bill, they probably can't pay for priority parking to talk to us. We also do this through formation, and one of the big pieces of our formation that probably hasn't received much attention is we have a school for 18-month-olds through kindergartners. And for special events like graduation or Christmas chapel, parents, guardians, grandparents rely on street parking. We also open our building up for use for free by nonprofits, for support groups like AA and ACA. They rely on street parking. For all of our activities, we rely heavily on street parking. I wish we didn't, but we do, and I'm worried about regulating Spring Street. I think if we regulate Spring Street, we will hobble St. Luke's ability to fulfill its mission. We will hobble St. Luke's ability to participate in our community, to serve the public and common good. So not only will it hurt St. Luke's, it would also hurt Hot Springs. So I would urge you to approve MAP B. Thank you.
Very
Open
good.
for any questions.
Any questions of Pastor Neighbors? Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Miss Pat King, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Pat King, 219 Glade, District 1. I'm kind of all over the place because there's so many things. Number one, I don't know the current law, but I know quite a few years ago they were proposing to have parking down Central Avenue, and Bud Kenny informed the city that it was against state law, and they checked, and we didn't have parking on Central Avenue, except down by across the street from the Landmark building. They had them for a while. And I talked to the city road, or the state road people, and they said, well, we just don't pave that part, because they knew it was illegal. But they didn't, they made accommodation, but they finally went. So I don't know if it's legal to make all those wonderful paid parking places on Central Avenue, and I'd suggest somebody double check that. As the preacher said, you also have, couldn't see the map well, but you've got a synagogue there that a Sunday no fee does not accommodate them. They have a different Sabbath. So my concern is how much thought has been put into this. This is the first reading of this ordinance. The board typically just skips the rule about 3 readings. And I think 3 readings, especially on something like this with so many little things, we didn't think of that. And we need to have time to think about it. And people in the public offering, have you thought about? I don't know how you're going to read the license plates, because I can't think of how a single station can read the license plates to tell who's parking there. But I'm a technophobic Luddite, so I pass on that. But I've got one of those little blue stickers I hang from my mirror. It's not on my license plate that I'm disabled. So is your system going to accommodate reading the little thing hanging from my mirror? If you give out stickers to people who are residents or whatever, how's your system going to read those things? I don't know. I don't know if anybody's thought of them. I don't know if I'm just reinventing the wheel. But these are real concerns that we really, I've said it before, we need to have the 3 readings. And I noticed on the first couple of things that got passed here tonight, nobody mentioned it. I don't care about those. But this one, I went and looked it up tonight. I was here at the last meeting on this issue on October 15th. Ordinance 6510 amended Ordinance 6499. On July 16th, Ordinance 6499 repealed Ordinance 4656. And they all go back to Chapter 7, Title 10 of the City Code. Tonight, we've got an ordinance amending 2503, amends Ordinance 6510, and the next one in Ordinance 25 504,
Ms.
amends
King,
Chapter
can
10-1.
Can you provide a concluding comment, please?
So, yeah, it's just, it's crazy. We need to stop and think before we pass an ordinance.
Thank you. Mr. Bart Stafford? Mr. Stafford, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Thank you very much. I'll try not to wear out my welcome with the board this evening. Bart Stafford, 900 Prospect in District 1. As a member of St. Luke's, I can tell you that there have been a number of occasions where it has been most convenient for what needed to be done, like moving supplies back and forth to the warming center and that sort of thing, bringing supplies back, just to park for a brief amount of time there on Spring Street in order to deal with those kind of things. That's going to become very difficult if the Spring Street spaces are regulated. I won't say anything more. I'm just hoping that you will approve a plan that will leave Spring Street unregulated the way it is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Josh Stewart? Please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Josh Stewart, District 1, I believe. This is my first time to be at a town hall meeting, so I don't
You're very
really...
welcome.
Thank you guys so much for just listening to me. As a musician performing downtown Hot Springs in Arkansas, I know firsthand how challenging it is to carry heavy equipment up every night to my apartments, often upstairs, and after waiting 20 to 30 minutes, because I live right outside the Ohio Club part, and there's a lot of construction that's already happening right there. I'm always waiting for about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm not even paying for it. For minutes to find parking. For employees and residents, these daily struggles are compounded by the unfairness of being required to pay for parking. Many residents signed rental contracts and are now locked in, and introducing an extra tax or expense they weren't informed of before signing the lease is unfair as it gets. On top of high rent and living in a food desert with no grocery stores, this added cost feels like a penalty for simply living and working in the community. If the city wants to keep downtown vibrant and thriving, it needs to support its people by offering parking passes and ensuring fair treatment for those who make the downtown what it is. That's all I got.
Any questions of Mr. Stewart? Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes those who have signed up to speak. We have discussion amongst directors, or we can move to perhaps Director Garcia. You want to make a motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend by substituting the map attachment B that was included in the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend the ordinance by including map B in lieu of the current map within the ordinance. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to amend signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have a
Discussion as amended.
discussion as amended. Director Webb, did you have some comment?
Yeah, I want to share a few things, Mayor. Thank you. You know, I think it was Lance who mentioned earlier that in 15 years of his service to the city as the many roles that he's held, he couldn't recall a single time that there's been any meter on Spring Street. The parking lot due north of St. Luke's is being regulated by a federal entity, which essentially means that's for the most part off limits to everyone except those who have special permission or work for that service. The parking lot that's due west of, this is St. Luke's parking lot, but due kind of west of the building itself, which butts up next to the playground area for the school that takes place at St. Luke's, only has 8 to 10 parking spots, and a majority of those are handicapped. There are some existing roads that run up and down Central who have breakdowns that are similar to what we are considering doing for Spring Street. I mentioned Court Street, I mentioned Prospect Avenue. You even got Chapel Street that comes off of Central that's all free. So what we're considering doing for Spring Street isn't really any different than what we already planned to do for Court Street, Prospect Avenue. And then I factor in too that, yeah, Sunday is free, but for what this particular church does for our community, a multitude of events and services take place at St. Luke's on all other days, including Sunday. So even Monday through Saturday, they have a host of outreach and services and volunteers that are coming through. We got to hear their pastor share that they, have a school for those who are 18 months to kindergarten, and there's, for those of us that are parents, we know what happens with school. There's all kinds of events that happen throughout the week. There are probably even some times where parents want to visit with the teacher just to check on the progress of their child, their son or their daughter. Would it be right to expect that person to visit their child at a church school to have to pay $4 to $8 every time they stop off? There are those services that are being provided for the less fortunate who have enough trouble as it is just to make ends meet and pay for bills. Could we really expect those to make that payment or park miles away? I think what hasn't been mentioned that we should consider is the congregation itself of the church and those who are maybe senior citizens who have handicaps, and with only 6 to 8 parking spots that St. Luke's owns nearby the church that are handicap accessible. And I think, Lance, you mentioned maybe 2 that are on Spring Street that are ADA compliant or handicap accessible. That's 10 parking spots. Their congregation is much higher than 10. So that's a lot of senior citizens who, if we didn't accept this amendment and allow this map B to be a part of our parking plan, where do we expect those seniors to park? And how might it serve their health if they are forced to park a long ways away from the church? Not only would it be healthy for those that have some handicap or just physical impairments to walk that far, but would it discourage those from even attending church because of where they have to park, because of the free parking not being available? So based upon the history of this church and what this church means for our community and what this church and their congregation does for the residents in the community of Hot Springs, I support map B, and I support us passing it to allow parking due north of St. Luke's Church on Spring Street for the around 24 spots to be free. Thank you.
Any other comments from directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our final action item of the evening is to consider ordinance O-25-04. And I'll entertain a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Director Holliday, was it?
Holliday.
Yes, seconded by
Second.
Director Trustee. Have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Please read by title.
Ordinance O-25-04, an ordinance providing for a downtown resident parking program by amending Chapter 7 of Title 10 of the Hot Springs Code and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion and a second to adopt.
So moved.
Director Dobbs Smith,
Second.
second by Director Holliday. And again, Mr. Spitzer, Deputy City Manager, will provide the staff report.
Yes, good evening again. Particular item is coming back to you in a very revised option. Previously, the board did not pass the resident parking program that was proposed. So what we've done is we made some adjustments to what was voted down previously. The resident parking program, what it does is deal with anywhere from 6 to 10 residents that are downtown that we are aware of currently. Obviously, as time progresses, there could be more, and those are things that we would certainly take into account. But what we're attempting to do this evening is to provide for a resident parking program. We do have the employee parking program, and what I'll talk about are the parameters of the resident parking program. We've got really 3 zones. We've got the Ouachita priority zone, we've got the secondary zone, and we have the primary zone, which is essentially Bathhouse Row, if you will. The section of downtown that we're talking about here is from Prospect as it heads north to the Park and Whittington split there. So that's the area that we're discussing here. For eligibility to be eligible for the resident parking program, they need to be either lessees or owners of primary residence that is located within that geographical boundaries that I was just discussing. And they do not otherwise possess off-street parking, which, as pretty much everybody knows, most of the area down there has National Park Service, Hot Springs Mountain or West Mountain on the backside of essentially all those properties. You would be eligible for 1 authorized vehicle per verified address. When we talk about verified address, that vehicle must be registered with Department of Finance Administration with that address as the registrant to be eligible as well. Those are 2 of the components. Now we'll talk about the pricing. If you're eligible, there are two tiers. Residential parking, if you're parking in the priority, the primary spaces, which are essentially that Bathhouse Row, Central Avenue section, you can park either in those priority or secondary spaces. The fee would be $260 per quarter per address. So, in essence, what you're talking about for an annual fee, that's $1,040 for that primary residential parking program. Now, if you're in the secondary, which is the largest parking area that we have, some of those side streets are secondary parking. Surface lots, secondary parking. Same setup. The secondary parking fee would be $130 per eligible residential address per quarter, or $520 annually. And when we talk about the zones, just kind of a reminder, the secondary zones, those are surface lots. Those are areas that are just off of the main area, main Central Avenue, and any street that's in very close proximity to it. Those are going to be those priority zones that have a variable rate. So this is our attempt to bring forth a residential parking program to you all with some revised rates. The rates are higher than the ones that were proposed at your December 17th meeting. And really, like I said before, at this point, you're really only talking approximately 6 to 10 people. Wouldn't be a great burden to administer this program. It'd be done very similar to the employee program, except it would be a different payment rate for those that are eligible. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Director Holliday?
Thank you. I have a couple questions. One, I wanted to point out Mr. Stewart, who spoke at the previous item. I think he had intended on speaking to this item. He and I have been messaging recently, so just to keep that in mind, because I think he stepped out, that his statements were most likely about the residential program. But my first question is, now that we're actually in first quarter and this isn't a program that gets prorated, when would this go into effect, and when would the fee be due?
If the board does approve it, of course, this is an ordinance, there's that 30-day period. You're really looking into sometime late February, first part of March, if you wanted to keep things kind of on from a calendar standpoint. March 1 would probably be just as good as any for an effective date.
Okay, and this may be a question for the city attorney, but again, because we're already in first quarter, is there any way that if this goes through, that the residents could go ahead and get in the system so they're in compliance? Because we're going to start looking at enforcement prior to March 1, but not have that fee due until the beginning of second quarter? Because I'm just thinking for some of these residents to, come up with over $200 within a month that they didn't necessarily plan for, could be a struggle, but at least if we can start it at the beginning of second quarter, there's a little bit of a time to plan financially.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. This is essentially establishing the city manager's ability to promulgate, a policy to handle this. So I would imagine that would be a part of what he would do in implementing it. We don't have a way of even putting those people in the system yet.
Right.
So if we wanted to say that they were going to go in the system tomorrow, we would be misleading ourselves. So I would say leave that to the city manager to make that part of his administrative policy.
Okay, well, and that's just something, I think it's a reasonable request, like
Agreed.
I said.
Sure.
That people need a minute to come up with, even the 130 to make sure that we've got a little bit of a buffer for them. And as Mr. Stewart mentioned, some people are in a lease. So if this isn't in their budget and they're in a lease until mid-year or late year, that could have a negative impact. So just want to keep that in mind. But again, I think Lance has spoken with most, if not all, of the residents, so we have them to get with. But I do know one of our other residents that I think has emailed everyone. She wants to make sure that she's able to get in the system as soon as possible, because her only option on that side of town is to be in primary and doesn't want to be out of compliance. So.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I understood that you had spoken with all of these residents. You said from 6, somewhere between 6 and 8.
That's correct.
And I had heard from Ms. Hale, and she thought that the proposal was reasonable, and heard from Mr. Stewart tonight that I take as opposed to this. What was the feedback from the other residents?
The others were agreeable with the fees. Initially, some of them were not, spoke to them early on in the process, really hadn't given a tremendous amount to the fees other than would they be interested in this residential program. But obviously, I think in the discussions, the fees, they were reasonable because in essence, it does allow them the flexibility to park in these primary priority spaces that are very, very close to the residences.
Thank you.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, previous proposal had 2 motor vehicles at each address. Any of those 6 to 8 to 10 people have 2 cars? Are there 2 people living in that apartment? Each has a car? What do they do?
The ones that I've discussed it with, really there was 1 car, vast majority. The ones that have multiple cars, they really wouldn't be eligible because it's not their primary residence. There were they had several cars, but they wouldn't be eligible for the program. And additionally, they choose to park further up Whittington Avenue in free parking just because they don't think that they should be parking in close proximity to all the different businesses. So it was more ideology for that particular person. But as I said, they wouldn't be eligible for the program. Vast majority of the ones I spoke with were single vehicle people.
And if someone moves in, a family moves in, they have 2 vehicles, what would they do with the second one? Move it up Whittington Avenue or move it somewhere else on Spring Street?
Yeah.
I mean, what would they do?
Yeah, they'd have to move it to unregulated parking, unfortunately. But, the way that this is written, that, the program in itself, if you're in a priority or in a secondary, per verifiable address, you do get one resident parking permit.
Would, Bill, would you, as city manager, have authority to make exception to that, or would that have to come back to the board
That's part of
to
the-
amend?
That's part of the parameters that are within the ordinance, so if you want to change that, you need to do it now. If you want to have a second permit that's allowed in secondary, maybe not have two in primary, but a secondary one could be in secondary, maybe that's something.
The primary vehicle in primary and the second vehicle
There you
in
go.
secondary?
Exactly.
Okay.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I think we should allow them to have two vehicles.
Well, nobody's preventing them from having two, they just where they're gonna park.
That's right. But they should be eligible for these fees to park a second vehicle if they want to. I think. So I would offer a motion to amend this to two motorized vehicles. Not that one, but
Second.
Two vehicles per eligible residential address.
And so just to clarify that.
Yes, sir.
So it would be an amendment that would authorize up to two, with the first one being able to be in a primary area. Second
Correct.
one only being able to be in the secondary.
That's fine. Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, what would the fee be for the secondary?
Same as what's already in there, 130?
130.
So you'd have a first one at 260, second one at 130.
I have a question.
All right. Director
Could we not
Dobson.
put that second one under an employee parking program? Wouldn't that be about
That's
the same
essentially
thing?
what they did.
It's essentially.
So it would be easier to administer, maybe?
Well,
No?
I think they're gonna, no, they probably have to do it as a resident, but,
Like, as a matter of like process, the the license plate in and itself is your permit. It is your digital permit. The way that the employee process works, we would in essence just have another permit if the board approves it for residential parking. So it would sort of be one and the same. Just it just wouldn't be called employee. It would be called resident.
I would envision this being one license plate has a, for lack of a better word, a red permit, and the other vehicle has a yellow permit.
Basically.
So that means the red one can park anywhere.
Right.
But the yellow one can only park yellow.
Or in blue.
Or in blue. That's
Sure.
unregulated.
What about the green? The green is a secondary zone? Because it's $2 an hour with no time limit?
It's actually labeled as a priority zone.
Priority.
So it's just the Washita priority zone. We tried to
Okay.
distinguish between the central and Washita.
Primary.
Would these vehicles be able to park in that zone?
A red one.
The
would,
red
not a
one,
yellow.
but not a yellow? Okay.
Correct.
You ever play the game Sorry?
I did. Not very good at it, but I played it.
Director Holliday?
Thank you. I think we may have had this conversation before, and it was kind of still up in the air, but when a resident has a parking pass, would it be relegated to the actual zone adjacent to their residency? Because like,
No.
how?
No.
Okay, so it's
If-
any
if-
and all.
If you have a red permit, you can park anywhere in the city of Hot Springs.
Okay.
That is a lawful parking spot in lieu of any otherwise applicable rates and time limits.
Okay, but and I think that, the fees that we're doing now are similar to like those employee fees, so I see how that works. But, when you start bringing in Washita, then it is a little bit of a different.
It is, however, I mean, you mentioned the green zones. I mean, bear in mind, this residential program is you're only eligible if you have a Central Avenue
right.
residential address
Right.
from Prospect to Whittington.
Right.
Correct.
So I don't see you parking on Washita if that's the case. You
No, I was
might,
thinking
but-
for other purposes, to just
Sure you can.
go patron. But again, we are only talking about 6 or 8 vehicles. This isn't going to have a very substantial impact on the movement of the other people parking, so.
Well, for now, yes. That
For
6
now.
to 8
Okay, so
vehicles.
we've had a fair amount of discussion. We have a motion.
And a
We have a second
Mhm.
to allow a second vehicle on the secondary, at the secondary rate. All in favor of the motion to amend, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have a ordinance that's been amended. Any additional discussion, Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. As we're discussing amendments, I did try to make this amendment at the previous attempt to have this ordinance in front of us. It wasn't successful, but I will not deter. I'm going to try it again tonight. I'm still of the opinion $260 per quarter for someone who is a resident here of Hot Springs is too much to pay for parking. I think $100 per quarter is a lot more reasonable for that primary parking spot, or that is parameter 3 in our packet. And the $130 under parameter 4 for the secondary zone parking for our resident is too high as well. It should be $50. I want to make a motion to amend parameter 3 to leave all the words as is except change 260 to $100, and also under parameter 4 to change 130 to $50. That's the motion that I want to make.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Dies for lack of a second. Any further discussion on the motion as amended?
I did, Mayor.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree that I think these rates are too high. I said that at the last meeting, and now the rates being proposed are higher than they were at the last meeting. So I'm still of that opinion. I think maybe what was proposed was a little bit too much, but I would propose to amend the fees for a primary zone to $150 per quarter, which would be $50 a month, and the fee for a secondary zone to $75, which would be per quarter, which would be $300 a year.
We have you want to restate the numbers? Brian, do you have those?
Yes, primary 150, secondary 75.
Per quarter,
Per quarter.
75 for the secondary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I have a question. I know I wasn't here at the last meeting when there was a lot of numbers thrown around. So where does this all land? And actually, Mary, you were kind of doing the math. How it relates to employee parking?
Actually, they're going to be less than the employee. And they're going to be able to park in the secondary spots.
Well,
And the employees aren't allowed to park in the secondary spot. They're allowed to park in the primary spot. They're allowed to park in the secondary spot. So I would be opposed to the rate amendment.
and the rates that are here now, though, were outside of the amendment, the rates that are here now were based on the employee rate.
On the secondary was the 130 times 4 would be 520. And,
Which is the equivalent of a full-time employee working during full
at 25
regulated.
cents an hour
Okay.
in the secondary. And, but that was, that was where I was coming from. I didn't, we're asking a resident who lives, we're providing the resident a parking opportunity outside their place of residency on Central Avenue at a cost of $3 a day. And apparently that's too much. 90 days and a quarter, 3 times 90 is 270. We're at what, 260? So I'll be voting against the amendment. Any further discussion? Director.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a problem with the residents paying less than the employees. The residents, either the people that own the property or the people that are living in the property, and if they're one and the same, they have made an investment in downtown Hot Springs. And I don't think it's fair to charge these rates to our residents. So I'll be supporting lowering the fees.
Director Webb?
I support making this amendment too. Obviously, I would like to see it even lower for the primary and secondary, but I'll take it any way I get it. And if we're able to get it through to where primary is 150 and secondary is 75 for residents of Hot Springs, then I support it. I would much rather see a bulk of the revenue that we take in on parking come from tourists than I would from our residents. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion to amend, and we have a second to the motion to amend with the rates. Please call the roll.
Director Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
No.
Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
No.
Mayor McCabe.
No. Motion is 3-3, so
3-3.
it fails.
So original motion still on the floor.
Yeah.
Well, not original, with one amendment.
We have the motion with Director, was it Garcia?
Second
Trustees.
car.
Second car motion. Please call the roll on the motion as amended.
Right. Mayor, I would like to point out that there was a sign-up sheet. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Miss Erin Huddleston, I am so sorry. Thank you. Please restate your name, address, and district, please.
Hi, my name is Erin Huddleston. I live at 122 Central Avenue. I'm a resident of District 1. I'm here with my husband, Jaime Correa Velez, and we're two of the infamous 6 to 10 residents in downtown Hot Springs. Andrea Hale is our neighbor, so that's 3 out of the 6 to 10 downtown residents, and then the gentleman that spoke before, so that's 4 of us. I have been an educator for 19 years now. I've been an educator here in Hot Springs as well as outside of the country in Cartagena, Colombia, where my husband is from. And when we moved back here to the United States, after living there for 8 years, that I chose to come back to Hot Springs. We chose to live downtown. I've invested my life into this community, and Mayor McCabe, the amount that you're asking us to pay is too much. I'm a teacher. My husband is an immigrant. He has a green card. He is an architect. He designs houses. He designed the New Hope facility that's off of the bypass in partnership with a firm that's also downtown. And the thing about being a teacher, when I was in Columbia, I had to ride the teacher bus. I didn't have a vehicle to drive down there because that's just not how anybody did that down there. But here, one thing that comes with me to school every single day is my car. So for 8 out of the 12 hours, that I would be required to pay, then I'm at school. And so the parking spot that I would be using is available for someone else to pay, a tourist to pay $2 an hour. And so for the 190 days a year that I teach, then you have the ability to earn an additional at least $3,000 during those 190 days because 8 hours a day, my car is with me at school where I park for free. And on the days that I'm not at school, I don't get a vacation the other however many days that is. I am not just sitting at home using a parking space on Central Avenue for $3 a day for 12 hours. I have a life and I go and do other things. We have one car. My neighbor Andrea has one car. I'm assuming the gentleman, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming the gentleman that spoke earlier has one vehicle. I learned tonight that there is a secondary parking between 2 buildings that are not used up a dark alley, and I don't feel comfortable coming home in the dark and parking there and coming home to my house because I don't want to pay or can't afford to pay the $260 a quarter. So thank you to both of you who tried to make it cheaper. Thank you, Director Holliday, for all that you've done for all of us. And I am sorry that the rest of you think that we should just have to pay like everybody else, because at this point, money is tight, and it is difficult for us to come up with $260 a quarter to do that. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all that we had that signed up for this. Is there another, please? Sir, would you like to come forward?
I got a text telling me to come back, so I came back. I don't even know where we're at right now at the moment, but
We're talking about the residential parking rates downtown.
Gotcha. I totally agree with the dark alleyway. As a woman, I didn't have anything else besides what I just talked about an hour ago. But completely tell you the same thing. I play music for a living, so I have to carry equipment every night that I go down every night. Like I said, I live really close to Ohio Club. There's no parking spots pretty much anytime anyways. And to make us pay for parking, it's just unnecessary. I think that we should get a parking pass. And for employees also who work, I think it is completely wrong and a disgrace to the locals for you guys to even make people pay to work downtown. And on top of that, I play music, like I said. I don't make that much. I live in a really nice loft, but if my roommate leaves, I'm screwed, especially if we have to pay for parking. On top of that, anywhere I've lived, it's always been $35 to $45 a year. It has never been $266 a year or a quarter, $1,000. It's a disgrace, 100% to the people.
Thank you. Sir, would you like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Jaime Corraveres. I'm an architect from Colombia. I'm established here since almost 5 years ago. My wife just spoke minutes ago. And I wanted to add a couple of things. As an architect, I know how urban ordinance work. The city I come from is a World Heritage Site, the same size of Hot Springs, with 1 million people population. It has a Navy base, it has an international port, cargo port, cruise ship port, it has an international airport, it has an industrial hub, 25% the size of Houston industrial area. It's that big. It's the second city of Colombia. And I don't see this kind of thing there. Like, this will be our downtown in Colombia, in my city, my hometown city, 5 centuries old city, is like 100 hectares. We're talking about 10 times what we have here in Hot Springs. We don't have blue zones. Right now, the city is just working on that, but people has the freedom to park whenever they can, because what we're working is a pacification of traffic. So in a part of downtown is being blocked only for pedestrian mobility. Part of downtown is only for vehicles, and another part is only for buses. So there's a lot that can be here, and we can learn from that experience. Cities in Europe do this as well, but punishing residents is not the way to do it. In my city, there's a sector which is like 40% of downtown, which only has 600 residents. 5 years ago, it had 1,600. In downtown Hot Springs, we're 6 to 8 residents. Are you kidding me? 6 to 8 residents. And then we have to pay the same as employees. We have only one car. My wife just said it. But I really want to get mine at some point. I work from home. I have an international practice. I have designed in 5 countries. My studio is still in Colombia, and I work from home here with a local firm as my host. So I work under the law. I bring business to downtown. One of my projects right now is particularly in downtown, and is to bring people to live back in downtown. How am I gonna solve those apartments? How is that gonna work for my client? One of my initiatives is the Majestic site. Do you know the size of the population, of the floating population that's gonna bring here? And I'm doing that from home, with a team spread all over the world in a network. And I'm working from home, without a car. But if I get to buy a car, I'm gonna have to pay $1,000 a year. Are you kidding me? Yeah, it's a lot. And I'm bringing business to this town. It's not just me. I can tell you, everybody who is here is bringing business here. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir, would you like to come forward?
Tyler Draper, District 5. I didn't get a chance to sign up. I was teaching and then had basketball games tonight. So, it's not often that I agree with Director Trusty. We go back to National Park in college, but I actually do agree with them. You know, it's like these locals that are living downtown, guys, they're paying property tax, the A&P tax downtown. Have y'all ever ate downtown? I mean, what is it, 12.5? And let's not even talk about the alcohol tax. I mean, it's crazy. And so these people are putting their time, their money, their investments into buying these properties, and it's 10 people. 10 people, maybe 12. Come on, they're investing in downtown. They're trying to, buy properties, and we need people to move downtown. We need housing. But then when we turn around and we're going to charge them to park downtown, that's telling people who want to move here and live downtown, that's telling them, hey, we don't want you downtown, and if you do want to be downtown, we're going to charge you more. I just, like Director Webb said, let's go get the tourists. Let's get their money. Our locals here, we're trying our best to make it better. Let's get the tourists. And when tourists do come here and they do talk to locals and we tell them, hey, we got to actually pay to park down here, those tourists are going to be like, I don't want to live there. Don't we want tourists to then, come and reinvest their money and come back to us? So I don't know. I can't believe that we want to charge residents down there. And if we could get the rate lower, I would definitely support that. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Director Garcia?
I had a question. Since I didn't know there were other residents here that didn't get to speak before we voted on the amendment, is that amendment dead? It can't be brought back? The amendment
It was
changing the
3-3.
rates?
You can ask to amend it again if you want to.
The same?
I mean,
It was 3-3. Normally, you have somebody from the prevailing side.
yeah, I mean, offer something else, make it $149.99 or something. I mean,
Before you do that, can I actually ask a question, like a brainstorming question? Is that okay?
Go ahead, Director.
Oh, what?
Kind of,
Howard.
well, a brand, I think that Director Garcia is looking to reconsider something, but one of the things that I suggested really early on, and it didn't land very well, but I don't know if it would now, is could the residents be included in the employee portal and only pay for the time that they use? Because to Ms. Huddleston's point, and even talking to Ms. Hale, I think, unfortunately, this might not help Mr. Stewart quite as much because of his schedule, but a lot of people just aren't there. They're not taking up the asset, and that's part of what we're trying to offset, is that particular asset would be out of play. Otherwise, the challenge to that is everyone we've heard from live in areas that don't have very close secondary parking. I think Canyon overnight is not ideal. And there's no secondary parking around. You have to get all the way around to the other side of Whittington, and that's, again, kind of a safety issue. But when we originally talked about this, I spoke with the city attorney and city manager and Lance as well about doing the 25 cents an hour just like we do for employees. It's equitable. But for those who do not have access or safe access to secondary parking, it would extend to primary for them.
okay, let me hit pause here for a second. The board has not voted yet on the amendment for 150 and 75?
Yes,
We
we
voted
They
it
did
down.
vote on that.
Yeah.
It
It was
failed with
3-3.
a
Oh,
I
3-3
I thought the
vote.
150 failed.
That
They
failed
both
for lack of a
failed.
second.
Oh, that
Yeah,
failed.
that one.
We need a
apologize.
Venn diagram here. We need. So that, I mean, that was just my original, it never made it to the board, but I just wanted to share that that was sort of my thought is use the employee portal. You know, they still have to have proof. It's tied to the vehicle that is tied to the residence, and it's still 25 cents an hour, and it's only for the time they use. Because a lot of people are gonna be gone all day.
And that's kind of what I was trying to say is why can't they be part of the employee? Because if they're working somewhere else, they're not downtown. And I know it wasn't popular, it wasn't brought up, but I still think that 8 o'clock is too late. I think most of the stores, a lot of the stores are closed at 6, but a lot of people come downtown and eat at 6.
Lance, what is the mechanics of doing such a, little pivot here of having downtown residents, all the parameters be the same except they're paying during the time that they're actually there?
The issue you would have is your primary priority zone. You know, it's got that variable rate and it's got a max of 4 hours. You would, I don't know that we could have another rate zone downtown for that Central Avenue section. I'd have to check that. That's having 2 zones in the same area is a little mechanically. I don't know how that would function. I'll just be honest with you.
Director Garcia?
I would move that for first quarter, there not be any rate enforcement for residents and to postpone this until it can be brought back for enforcement and adoption for second quarter.
Okay, you want to table it as it's been.
Till February.
Okay.
We have a motion to table. We have a second.
As long as the residents aren't gonna get in trouble.
No enforcement and no
No, they won't.
adoption.
Again, I'm sorry, motion to table and second, we don't have a second yet, but from again, administrative function, the resident has their car on Central, we're gonna start enforcing on February 1. They're not gonna know unless they submit their info as if we had a rate assigned, and then they just.
So how are they
That's
going to get their
No,
information now?
I agree. That's what I'm asking is from administrative function, they'll
I
be
mean,
in the
even-
system, but with no fee until beginning of the second quarter? Or?
They would need to submit their license. That would be step one. But as far as the rate, the fee that would be assessed, we could probably come up with something that would not assess a fee to that category or class of
Until
parkers.
a date certain in the
Yeah,
future.
I mean, I'm fairly certain we can do that. It's just if you, I don't want to confuse it. If you have 2 rate zones along Central, one for residents and one for everybody else, I don't know that the software is that sophisticated that it can get that granular on that license plate is a special one and it only is charged 25 cents in this zone because all it knows is zones. Secondary.
Can you have an
priority.
exemption?
You can have free parking, certainly.
I mean, a
that's-
sticker for that?
Yeah, like a handicap sticker hanger.
It's got to be tied to the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be on their plate, but
It just has to be logged in. The plate number has the data. You got a pending motion or something?
I have a motion to table. I don't have a second yet.
Motion to table.
Do I have a second to table?
I would love to, as long as the residents aren't gonna get in trouble when we start enforcing. I don't want to table this and then that's been the issue, to put them in jeopardy on February 1.
yeah, I don't want it either.
Again, these are administrative matters. I think the city administration has heard us and they'll figure out a way of ensuring that they're not going to be ticketed. Because, we do want to get it right.
Yeah.
And everybody's input. So we have a motion to We have a second.
Then I'll second.
We
as
got a
long as you
motion
guys
by
can-
Director Garcia, seconded by Director Holliday to table. Please call the roll.
First meeting in February.
To the first meeting in February. That was my question. Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
No.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye, motion to table is approved. That concludes the business section of the meeting, the action items. We're under Board of Directors items for discussion. Items for discussion? Really? Director Garcia?
If no one has any items for discussion, or if you have any more comments, if not, I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.